Very good morning to you. Welcome to Newsroom. We're coming to you live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg. I'm Zweli Mkhize. I'll be with you until midday today. Of course, let's have a look at our question of the day. We'll start with that. What do you make of free higher education announcement that was made by President Jacob Zuma? Do send us your comments on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. We also have our poll of the day coming up. Today we ask you, what do you think about with regards to what is going to be victorious? And let's have a look at those tweets first. Well, it was long overdue, that when they're coming in from Thabo Mkhize. Of course, that's with our question of the day. Another one, we welcome it as it's a step in the right direction to help the poor black students to be skilled. That when they're coming in from Dr. Moses Vilane. And then going back to our poll of the day on who you think will be victorious. Is it going to be a CR17 or is it going to be Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma? Well, the poll there with the hashtag SABC News, it seems 80% of people on Twitter are vying for Cyril Ramaphosa, thinking that he's going to come up victorious. 20% there are vying for Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Well, that's how the poll stands at the moment. Another one coming in here, Team NDZ, but let's wait and see. The time for talking and arguing is over. That one coming in there from Michael. Another one here, definitely Ramaphosa will win the race. Well, we're just going to have to wait and see. Still another 2 more days until we wrap that up. Well, that being said, before we continue, let's have a look at your morning headlines. Delegates from KZN, the largest contingent, are currently voting for the top 6 at the ANC's National Elective Congress at Nasrec, south of Johannesburg. The delegates from Gauteng, the Eastern Cape and Limpopo provinces still have to vote. The DA has granted Patricia de Lille an extension up until tomorrow to explain to the party why she should not resign as Cape Town mayor. At least 26 people have been killed and others injured after Tropical Storm Kai Tak brought heavy rains that triggered landslides in the Philippines. Let's cross over back to our studios at Nasrec. Leanne Manis as well as Peter Ndoro taking us through day 3 of the ANC elective conference.
Well, welcome back to Nasrec, where things are really getting a little bit tense now at the Expo Centre, where the elective conference is taking place, the 54th elective conference of the ANC. And I tell you, Peter, I mean, these are now the hours that we're counting down until those final results do come out.
Absolutely. I get a sense from that singing that it's partly relief because it's been a long night of voting. 4,700 odd delegates are casting their vote for their preferred candidate. And the sun has come up. It's a new day, and in a few hours we'll know the new leadership of the African National Congress at their ANC 54th National Conference. It's been tense, it's been eventful. Lots of things have happened. We had presidential candidates decline nominations, and in the end we had a final list, and you know, perhaps not too many surprises, but perhaps those that did fall away, like Zweli Mkhize falling away, was quite a surprise for many people. But here we are in a few hours' time. Most people can start their holidays properly.
Well, no doubt, no candidate declining a nomination without strategically thinking, and I believe that that's the way we have to think at this stage. Is that Zweli Mkhize certainly knowing something that you and I don't know, and obviously that's why backing out of the race to try and get into it. But what we can tell you right now is that the Gauteng province is the only province that's left to vote. They've got 491 delegates, and that was about a half an hour ago that we were told that. So perhaps they quite swiftly through that number, and then it's up to the Youth League, it's up to the Veterans League, it's up to the Women's League, then the PECs, and then the NEC, and those are the final ones. So it's going to be quite interesting to see where those votes go, and hopefully by midday we should have some conclusion to the voting, and thereafter it's the counting.
Right, and another important event that's taking place right now is the Progressive Business Forum, and the Minister of Small Business, Lindiwe Zulu, has been addressing that. Let's cross there now.
Their businesses. So you've got that issue of a 30-day payment, but you've also got an issue of access to markets by these SMEs. You've got big companies who locked that market a very, very long time ago. You've got these big companies coming and sitting down with government, the procurement officer and so forth, and saying, we can give you this discount. And for me is, I know government have to save the money, but I'm looking, on the one hand, we are saying that you must support your small and medium enterprises and your black and your women-owned and your youth-owned. At the same time, you have these systems that make it very difficult for them. So the issue for me is really much, much more than the 30-day payment. And then the other question is about the 54th Congress will carry on the policies. What is the ministry doing to assist farmers on the issue of land? I raised the issue of land because it's one of the most thorny issues in South Africa. And quite frankly, it shouldn't be a thorny issue. If you understand the plight of black people in particular, if you understand why our people were headed into townships and headed into rural areas, and they never had the opportunity which the farmers, I mean those farmers that are big farmers today, our people have to do a catch-up. They have to catch up with farmers who've been operating for the past 50, 100 years. They have to do catch-up with generations of farming. It's important for us as South Africans collectively, both the farmers who own the land and government, to really begin to look at another way of doing this, because without land, what are we talking about? And without ensuring that when those who receive, who get the land, part of which has been now taken back or bought back by the government and given to our people, without assisting our people with the relevant implements, with the education for how to use that land, what are we talking about? This government is committed to ensuring that everything is done in an orderly fashion, but you know, orderly fashion also has to be a bit quick, you know. Orderly fashion must not take us too long, because we keep on saying, no, we can't do it because the investors are telling us this. The investors, especially the international investors, they live there where they live. They've got their own people who own that land. They need to understand that in the South African context, we are trying to address the imbalances of the past. We do work with the Department of Agriculture. We also work together with the Department of Land Affairs. We have transversal agreements with these two departments so that whatever we do has to be in a coordinated fashion. Part of what we want to do, particularly as a Department of Small Business Development, working with the Department of Agriculture, is to say where we have cooperatives, which we are supporting as a department, there's got to be a connection with the Department of Agriculture, with the Department of Land Affairs, because they also sit with a lot of incentives for these small-scale farmers. But if we work together, in a coordinated manner, it means that we're not losing any resources along the line. So to that issue, really, I want to say to you, we're working with the Departments of Agriculture. We're also working with the provinces, because again, I keep on wanting to make the emphasis that this is one government, not 3 different governments. It's one government with 3 spheres of government, but the 3 spheres of government, through the intergovernmental relations that we have, which is, by the way, legislated, we've got to make sure that happens. The issue of red tape, yes, we rolled out a plan for assisting at provincial and local level the issue of red tape, because this red tape is really a frustration to many of our SMMEs. And what happens is that government tries to put systems in place, which are systems that are supposed to be assisting governments to make sure that there's accountability, to make sure that there's value for money, to make sure that whatever we do, we must make sure that we know what we're doing. But somewhere along the line, we end up also a little bit tangling ourselves up with that process and making it very difficult for your SMMEs to access the very same opportunities that we say they should. The reason why we have these workshops at a local level and spread them out throughout the country, it is because we want people at a local level who are behind the desk, even those that are passing regulations, that are passing legislation, they should be able to understand the real needs and the real challenges that are faced by SMMEs. We know that since 1994, there's a lot of legislation that has been passed. As a department, we think that it's important for us to look at that legislation vis-a-vis its impact on small and medium enterprises. Some of it is very good legislation. And by the way, at the moment, we are working on our Small Business Development Act. We've gone out to all the provinces to try and engage at provincial level, so that we're engaging not just government. We've engaged different role players with different interests on small and medium enterprises. We're hoping that that Small Business Development Act that will then be processed through Parliament, and hopefully next year we will finalize it, so that issues of definition of what SMMEs are, for instance, shouldn't be a quarrel with anybody. It should be very straightforward. The issue of the DTI requests SMMEs to come up with 3 million. Where should the SMMEs get this? Yes, we are very conscious of that. We are very aware of that. It is for that reason, for instance, that if you recall, the president announced that Minister Gigaba of Finance, Minister Naledi Pandor, and myself will have to work on a fund that is going to be focused on your startups and the kind of people you are talking about as SMMEs who are really at the beginning. This fund is supposed to have something like 1.5 billion for starters, but the fund really will be focusing on your startups, the ones that are at the lowest level, so that when we are being asked, when you have a bright idea, you've got a good experience already, and good experience for me, it's not about you having been there for the past 20 years or whatever. If you can prove in that space that here is something that I have and it has a potential for growth, that's why we have the gazelles here, because part of what has been happening with the gazelles, many of them started from zero with absolutely nothing. But our support, being almost like a startup, has made it happen. So in next year we will be announcing that fund as to when will the fund start. And I know that this is very painful, because we're thinking of the fund only starting in 2019, 2020. That's probably going to be far for some. But remember that when we have a fund like that, we've got to be absolutely sure that the money is going to be going in the right place. The money will be accounted for. We will see that value for money. The other one is the one that was announced by the private sector of, again, 1.5 billion rand, which they also indicated that that money will focus more on your startups. And of course, it's taken very long. I don't know if there are any of the people who are part of that fund to finalize. It's taken very long. That fund was announced Mandisa last year or year before. It was announced last year, and now it's a whole year. I actually thought that the private sector would do things faster than us. So I'm surprised that till now, and your SMMEs are already knocking on our doors and saying, Minister, how do we access that fund? It will also then be an issue of communication. How do we make sure that once that fund has now been finalized and it's accessed, how do we make SMMEs to be aware of the fund and how to access this fund? I think that's all for now.
Thank you. We'll do a second round now on this side, but I know one of the Giselles here also indicated, so let's start this round also with the Giselle, and then I'm moving to that corner over there. So bring the mic to the front, please. We'll once again take, we'll take 5 or 6, so that's what we'll be able to fit in.
Oh, thanks. Good morning. My name is Nyiko Mabunda. I'm actually a policy analyst in government, but I'm here to support my sister who's a National Gazelle. She's the founder and CEO of Masana Dietetics, and she manufactures instant porridge. My issue, Minister, and all the colleagues that are here from government, is that we have a lot of policy documents and strategies around government to support SMMEs, but we do not have one depository system that an SMME can go and get assistance from. If you go to the IDC, for instance, and say you are a National Gazelle, they'll tell you that, no, that's a Minister Zulu program, so we can't assist you there. So we need someone who can be a champion for a consolidated approach from government to support SMMEs. And for me, I really do not think that most people will say that we need more money on SMMEs, but it's about the coordination of the amount of monies that are around in government. You have a lot of funds that are in the provinces, municipalities, and national, but they are not accessible to anyone, and you cannot have, then you have some people double dipping on some of these things. So how do we create a one system for government, for SMMEs from government that deals with registration, deals with export support, deals with manufacturing, deals with getting capital goods support, and all of those things within one repository system that doesn't have to be all over the place.
Thank you very much. I think we got that point. So we're going to go to we'll do the lady in the front and then that table in the middle there.
Thank you. My name is Moretlo Molifi. I run a company called Telemedicine Africa, but I'd like to focus on innovation. And I'm going to wait for the minister to listen because she needs to listen to this one. Minister, I think for small businesses to grow, I think we really need to focus on innovation. I can tell you, I mean, I've been running a telemedicine company since 2008 and I haven't succeeded. I get more business outside South Africa than in South Africa because in South Africa I don't get support. But I would like to say we need to focus on innovative solutions that small businesses can come up with. We've got I think it's the only third license in the country for stem cells. So you can store your cells in case you get cancer later or anything, you can use your own cells to restore your own health. But we don't get assistance in the country because people don't understand the regulation, one. Secondly, no one understands that technology. So how do you even go to the IDC or the NEF for funding if they don't? We've invested almost 5 million in a lab in South Africa, in Sandton, to store stem cells. But we don't get support because people don't understand the technology. So I think what we need in the Ministry of Small Business is actually we need to capacitate it with people who can actually go out there, read up on what we can do as a country to actually grow the economy, because those are the things that can grow the economy, because there are new developments and they are not anywhere in other. We can be the only stem cell, we are the only stem cell lab on the continent at the moment, but we don't get support.
Thank you very much. To the table over there. No, it's going there.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. My name is Leonard Sizani, mainly active in the health sector. My question basically is regarding small businesses. So far, listening to the debates in this room, there's been much said about the middle person in terms of the hierarchy. But my concern is mainly regarding the small businesses, mainly found in black townships. My question to you, Minister, is what programs is the department having to protect, to upskill, and to develop the small businesses, protecting them against big business, protecting them against well-organized and generally business astute foreign nationals. We find our people, they don't have probably the opportunity to be in forum like these ones, but they are from day to day being subjected to eradication, if I can put it that way. And I don't see any protection or programs coming from the department, which I had hoped it would be coming from them. And to round off what I'm trying to say here, in terms of protection and also in terms of finance, their capital demands to set up businesses are normally not that much, but there's nothing in space that I'm aware of that is helping them. And like I'm saying, the townships, as we speak now, big businesses, the small shops that we used to know belong to Mr. So-and-so are being eroded. We are creating very mega malls to the disadvantage of our people. The third and the last point is, I think, in a country like ours, there's got to be a certain level of protection from entry-level businesses. Your saloons, your caterings, your securities. And that's where our people are. And the very same people that we know have been subjected and are a product of Bantu education that never prepared them to play any role in business and in the economy. So what programs, what are we doing about those people? Because I think instead of empowering them, we're just letting them to die, and we're watching and we're marching on. Thank you very much. And also thank you very much for going over your time, because that means we get the 10,000 Rand fine in. Thank you for that contribution. Mandisa, would you join us on stage, please? Can we take the mic over to the lady? Yes, that's one, and then we'll come to you, and then we'll finish this round. Please be mindful of the 10,000 Rand fine.
Morning, everyone. I'm Togo Mkwanes Kaluva from the Civil Rights Commission. I think for you, the Minister, the question for us will be, how do you harness the skills in the rural areas, especially around women? Because, you know, the skills they have are mainly traditional. For instance, in terms of beadwork, traditional clothes. And those women, they don't have anything. As we were saying, that opportunities in rural areas are very scarce. So I would like to know what your department intends to do about these highly skilled women who are in the middle of nowhere. You see their skills when there are events like the Reed Dance and other traditional festivals, highly skilled, and I'm glad that the other people like the EU and other ambassadors, how do you export the products that they produce? But before you export them, you need to build them first. So they're not the type of people who will come to these types of meetings or know where to go to. If I'm stuck in the middle of a village somewhere and this is the only skill I have, the assistants will have to come to me. And specifically for multi-choice, we would like to find out what is your response to your platform being used by religious leaders who exploit people using your platform, who sell products and promise people that these products will do all sorts of things that we all know won't happen. But you are the gateway to their so-called market. So what is it that you as MultiChoice are willing to do in order for you to help stop the exploitation of people who are destitute and desperate when your platform is being used to access those people?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The gentleman in front, yeah.
Thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Dr. George Tsibane from Black Business Council, as well as the Black Business Council in the built environment and chairing the subcommittee on water and sanitation. Very important to me is that I have attended, which is I very much appreciating the Honorable Minister, for a summit on water and sanitation very recently. What is very clear to me is that water and sanitation, energy, agriculture, land, and technology and health are mega nexus that we need to work on. But the critical question that we need to unblock is the issue of water licensing, which is affecting emerging farmers, particular black farmers. And very importantly, recently we were in the Western Cape. As we are saying that Western Cape is, some people think is an island in Africa. And this is a point, a tip of Africa anyway. So basically we are working with emerging SMEs there as Black Business Council to deal with issues of SMEs and priorities around that. What we need from the ministry is the focus around water and sanitation, and secondly, licensing of water, because the ownership of the issue of land and ownership of licensing is still resting with the past. And that is a challenge that is affecting the whole developmental state objective, as the SG was saying yesterday. So we're pleading with you on that. And coming to MultiChoice, I was whispering to Her Excellency here, Cecil Julien, that MultiChoice SMEs, you find them in each corner, in each street, in every township in the country. I think we need to give an applause to a South African company that has done that very well. However, the most important thing is that we are working to change, because water constraint, climate change has arrived and is going to affect our business. We need water awareness in the country and knowledge. So we need to use your platform as Black Business Council in the built environment to deal with this. We have conceptualized a very detailed seminars around that. And we have launched them in the JSE. Most people said, why are you crazy looking at JSE? The 3% of multi-shares that are there have to be increased. That is what the outcome of the small business department is looking at. So basically, we want to use your platform. Can you take that challenge?
Good, thank you very much. We're going to have to excuse the Minister very, very shortly, but the CEO of CEDA is here, which will continue with it. So Minister, if you want to maybe just take 1 or 2 points and then hand over. And we'll come around for another round just now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Darrell. I'm just going to step out to do interviews. I'll be back. I'm not leaving. Yes, the issue of innovation, I can't agree with you more. part of the reasons why we are working together with the Department of Science and Technology, very, very closely working with the Minister of Science and Technology. And part of the reason why also, as I was speaking, I said the ministers who've been given the responsibility to look at supporting SMEs at that level through this fund that will have to be set up. It's myself, the Minister of Finance, as well as the Minister of Science and Technology. It is because of the experience that we're seeing on the ground and really responding to what you are saying. And I must really congratulate you, really, because I've known you for forever. And I know long before I became a Minister of Small Business Development, when I was still in the Department of Foreign Affairs in the early 200s, I used to see you in many of the African countries trying to knock on doors, and you kept on repeating to me even at that time that why is it that one would go and get the support out and interest outside of South Africa. I think for me, it also was, to that large extent, if I can recall back to it, it wasn't also an issue of racism, because many a times I remember we had long discussions about how people didn't even think that you would be in that space. Worst of all, being a woman, that was even making it much more difficult. So I fully agree with you with the issue of ensuring that we support more and more people who are innovative, because what is entrepreneurship about? Entrepreneurship is about innovation. You've got to be able to produce something that people are going to appreciate and pop out of their pockets for, because you're not going to produce something that is meaningless to anybody else. And so I do believe that this coordinated approach by my department, the Department of Science and Technology, as well as the Department of Trade and Industry, really. I think the weakness here in the system has been our not being able to coordinate all these things and making people run from one place to the other, which also responds to your issue here. We do need this one-stop shop that we are trying to work on, and hopefully we've started a few. I think Mandisa will respond to the few that we already have, because we can see the progress on that already. And also this speaks to the consolidated approach by the different government departments, so that people don't do the running up and down. I think, Mandisa, you can respond to that because at 9:30 I have to run out to do an interview. As for what the program, what the department is doing in as far as protecting our small and medium enterprises, including the informal businesses, by the way, because they also are being really under stress and strain in the townships where, one, the infrastructure development is very poor, two, even the regulatory environment there makes it very difficult for them. Three, there's not even proper registration of the businesses that are operating there. Hence, you find that there's a lot of foreign-owned businesses, which we are working on a program now of registration. Because unless you know who is where, then it becomes very difficult for you to think of the interventions. I must say to you, there is a interministerial there's an interministerial plan. We bring Minister of Home Affairs, Minister of Finance, Minister myself, DTI, and a number of us ministers. We have now come together to say this cannot be a one ministry approach in dealing with it. We need all the ministers in one, and this interministerial committee has really done a lot of work. In fact, just yesterday, I was told by the DG in the presidency, in the monitoring and evaluation, that they want to move very fast with this whole issue of the registration of foreign nationals. I know that the issue of designating the businesses as salons and others only to South Africans, sometimes it creates a bit of controversy, and some people say, no, but then we are being discriminatory about it. But the bottom line is that as a department, we are also looking at the fact that none of our own people can go to neighboring country and begin to set that up. We need to be conscious of our own national interests while at the same time respecting the human rights and all that. And we do need to put plans in place which are not going to set people against excuse me, against each other. I do fully agree that we need to focus on that because many of our people on the ground, I mean, my constituency is Welkom. The areas which I visit in the town, I'm telling you, all the salons have been taken over. And so our people don't have the opportunity. And this is a two-way process. One is about ensuring that we develop something that the world would not accuse us of being very discriminatory and causing conflict even amongst our communities, but we do need to respond to this. As a department, we've made it very clear we do need to respond to it, and I'm sure in the near future. And also we have a relationship already existing with specific organizations of those, we've got different organizations that we are working with, those that own salons, that own spaza shops, that we're trying to engage with them so that we can begin to focus, we can work together on this one so it doesn't become just a government-owned, it's only a government program. I'm going to quickly really request that Mandisa deals with some of the programs that we have by the department in responding to upskilling our people. But before I do that, we do have a program that is called National Upliftment Strategy. That one is focusing on two folds. One is about empowering people who are in the informal sector by training them. So far, we've trained almost we're almost on 3,000, which is a drop in the ocean if we look at the 7,000, yeah. If we look at the entire country, we need to do a lot of training. And that program is one which we are trying to also ensure that it happens through the economic development offices. The ones that we have trained so far, we've trained them on the management of their business, identifying the relevant business in the area. We've trained them on the basics of doing business, but we've moved a step further. We've also given them implements of trade. So those who are in salons, we give them the hair dryers and other things. Those who are having the spaza shops, we try and assist them with the refrigerators. We try to assist them with the things that they need themselves. But this program is really, really very small, and it was stalled to a degree because we wanted to work with the retail sector and the retail sector. Because again, on our own, we are not able to do that. If I can just be excused a bit to go do the interview and come back. Mandisa, you take a few questions.
Good morning to everybody, and then just continuing where the minister left, I think I can just mention a few programs speaking to some of the questions that have been raised. I think combining two contributors from the health sector, I think it was Mr. Sizani and the lady at the front here from Telemed Works, talking about innovation. Yes, I can agree fully with the need for us to strengthen our efforts in terms of support to R&D work, but much is being done already. Adding to the numbers that Minister shared with us, as SIDA, we are already supporting about 57 incubators nationally. And this is one of the areas that we have consciously given focus on, and we are intending to invest even deeper in this area. I think it is not by chance, as an example, that we have some of the diplomatic corps around the room. This program is one of the programs that we are working with foreign or multinational companies, as well as our diplomatic corps in South Africa. We have been to Denmark, we have been to France, we have arrangements. One of the incubators that we have recently launched that is actually having a number of startups as innovators and accelerators in the medical space. It's one that is being supported in partnership with our French partners, the French Tech Lab in Cape Town. But one of the things that we are doing through this program is to get into the universities in terms of following the research output of the universities, following the prototype products that are coming out of university research work, and assisting the process of commercializing those. But greatly, we realize that this is an area that requires expertise in terms of sector knowledge. And this is the area through which we are collaborating and seeking more collaborations with the private sector. I think on that note, I must be quick to say partnerships that we seek from the private sector are partnerships that give us sector knowledge. So when we are knocking at your doors for partnership in terms of working with the private sector on enterprise and supplier development initiatives, we want to build on the technical knowledge that is in the private sector to combine with our initiatives that we are embarking on as government. So with the business core that is here, I am just throwing an invitation to say, let us not fragment our initiatives, let us collaborate, and on our side, we want your expertise. But going further on some of the programs, I want to say for those that are in the education field here, the other area that we are focusing on, it's entrepreneurship at schools. And there we have already started to work with a number of schools. Recently, we were having awards out of a program that we are working on with Prime Media, Prime Stars, where we are going into schools, especially schools in rural areas and in townships, just to make sure that we take the level of entrepreneurial activity in South Africa to another level by starting introducing entrepreneurship at schools level. To touch on this, we are working closely with the TVETs as well. We are trying to connect with the technical skills that are coming out of the TVETs. And whilst the learners are in that place of learning, we bring in the entrepreneurial flair so that by the time they graduate, they are ready as job seekers if they want to do that, but they are equally ready as job creators. Again, I must indicate that one of the things that we are focusing on is the issue of coordination. Just to touch on a few, answering some of the questions that have been raised, is to say, as the Department of Small Business Development, we are already making extensive investment in the issue of making sure there is a central repository where entrepreneurs can go into and find as much information about support services that are out there. We are engaging various players at the moment, trying to set up this portal. And once more, I am throwing an invitation to those that are in the ICT sector to say you are working on this, come, give us ideas, appraise what we are already doing. We have touched on some of the role players in the ICT sector, but if you are here and you are in that sector, we are welcoming you to come and appraise what we are doing and give us more ideas. But finally, to allow more questions to come, I think I should touch as well on the issue of the red tape reduction, to say, again, this is an area that has been part of our agenda as government at large, to say, how do we make business, the business environment conducive for small enterprises in particular, and making sure that we break the chain and we cut the chain shorter in terms of doing business in South Africa. Again, here we are having various initiatives, and this is one of the areas that is attended to in our legislation, as Minister spoke to a process currently in place that is reviewing the Small Business Act.
Thank you, Mandisa. Right, we'll take another round, a short round, and then we're going to have to, we are starting to run out of time. So I've acknowledged the lady there that wanted to steal the mic just now. So we'll do you, and then we'll take those two hands in, then we're finished.
Thank you, convener. I just took an opportunity because she was just next to me.
Like a real business person.
Thank you. My name is Cindy Shabalala. I'm the Group COO for Edison Power and the Treasurer General for Black Business Council. My colleague has already addressed me on the issue of township economy and also the issues of malls in the townships. But mine will be specifically focusing on bricks. We had an extensive discussion with the minister. Mandisa, I hope you'll be our spokesperson on this matter. We want to see BRICS, South Africa women participating. I know the Russian women are very strong and they're coming very strong on us. But from the South African perspective, we don't see South African women participating in BRICS. And we have spoken to the minister, and the minister is addressing that matter, is to actually remind her that we are ready. We want to really see women in BRICS participating, most particularly the South African women. Thank you, convener.
Right, we'll move to the table next to you.
Thank you very much, Minister in absentia. I am Franz Mwekesi from Santaco. Let me just briefly, without paying another 10,000, okay?
Sure.
Just briefly to introduce the conglomerate, one of the GDP booster of this country is the taxi industry in South Africa. We are currently having 189,000 operators in the country with a fleet of 447,720. When you take the value of those fleet, it's almost 1 trillion that all operators in South Africa are owing to all motor vehicle agents. Now, as an industry, we are not benefiting anything, but we are using 25 million petrol per day in this country. Petrol has gone up. We are not complaining. And we won't complain because we know that money that has been generated is much more. Now, in a year, we are using 6.7 billion of tires, the value in this country. Now, I'm saying this because it is important that the transport cooperative that are within the taxi industry must be supported by the department. Because the service level system that the industry is giving to these operators is much more immense, and it is equivalent to the biggest value that we can have in the country. Now, my question to the department is, we have started with a project in Mpumalanga. Shortly we have launched all the 3 ties of cooperative levels in Mpumalanga. And we don't see any way where the department is mentioning that. And what is the involvement of the department in terms of developing this transport cooperative in the country? Number 2 question is the challenges that we are facing as the transport cooperatives within the department. We are one of the cooperatives that is now equals to the farming because of our massiveness. So we are asking that the department, are you recognizing this cooperative, or have you heard about it? And what is your involvement towards the upliftment of this sector? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to the last question, the gentleman with the, is it a mauve shirt? And thank you very much for the 10,000 Rand contribution, by the way.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Mishak Ndebele. I'm a lecturer at Wits School of Education. And I'm coming from the angle of education. I'm not a businessman as such. But I've been excited really by the minister's reference to working with the Department of Agriculture. And at the same time, there is a gentleman who spoke earlier on about the issue of land. And my real concern here as an educator is that our young people, yes, there is land, but our young people do not have the skills to work on that land. And my worry throughout the years has been that our system of education does not put priority or give priority to agriculture. Now, that could be happening, but I'm not aware. I'm not aware. And my worry here, Chair, is that we have a curriculum that emphasizes many other things, yes, but those things do not seem to empower our young people, especially the rural folk with so much land in South Africa. So I was going to ask that this department works very closely with the Department of Education, and it works to introduce agriculture as a very important component in our school curriculum. Now, that would actually cascade into maybe teacher education, teachers being trained in the agricultural field. So my real interest really here is emphasis on agriculture and maybe the establishment of agricultural colleges, especially emphasis on agriculture in our TVET colleges.
Thank you very much, Mandisa.
Perhaps before I respond to these contributions, let me just preface my response by taking a quote that I think is very relevant given where we are. This is a quote from the former and the late President Mandela, when he says, should we fail to make partnerships for development which can eradicate the social ills and can help us and our communities gain economic breakthrough, life will judge us harshly. On this background, I think I was prompted to recall this quote because of the nature of the questions. Firstly, I must say that on the question on township economy, which has been revisited, currently we are, as the department, looking at this with great interest. As a result, in the speech that was shared with us by the minister, she touched on the work that we are doing. Maybe let me just filter down from her speech to say, as the department and as SEDA, we have now made a conscious decision that says, in the work that we are doing, we want to make sure that we participate fully and actively in the IDP processes of the municipalities. We want to make sure that we participate fully in capacitation around the issues of entrepreneurship and enterprise development, looking at the local sphere of government. We have taken a conscious decision that says, as SEDA, we will not be selfish with our tools and instruments that are tools and instruments that seek to assist the process of supporting small enterprises. At this point in time, we are working heavily to make sure that we come up with a program that will support the LED structures of the municipalities to a point that what we do in our network of small enterprise development agency can be done in the local sphere of government. And I think we have as well taken a conscious decision to say in townships, we want to support the process of revitalizing capacitation of the structures. I'll make an example, chambers of commerce. We've had a program that was looking into chamber support program, but we want to make sure that instead of focusing on that program as support instrument to 1 or 2 chambers, we can be able to expand that. In our conversations where we are knocking into private sector space, tapping on ESD facilities, we are looking at this area as one of the areas that should be heavily supported. We are working with the private sector in terms of setting up what we call enterprise support hubs. We've seen some of these hubs being supported by places like, I know MTN does have some incubators of some kind, but we've been working, as an example, with Transnet as well. I know we have been as well working with other private sector companies, especially in the mining industry. So again, this is one of the areas where I'm saying join us in what we are already doing. As government, the best we can do is to develop models, and it is our wish that those that have financial muscle, they take up this model and help us to expand. Again, talking to the BRICS question, touching on the women and what is the aspiration there, I think we are connecting with you. If I can make by an example, I think a week and a half ago, I was sitting with someone from the Russian embassy where we were trying to begin to talk to say, what will be the program for small enterprises when BRICS Summit comes here? And we are already talking to something in line with the question that was posed to say, soon enough, we must begin to make sure that there is a program following one of the programs that we already have as SIDA, which we call Pitch and Prepare, where we are showcasing small enterprises, either to funders or either to investors of different kinds, where we are saying we will use the same model to make sure that there is a parallel program that is focusing on small enterprises. And key to that will be to showcase our small enterprises to the contingents that will be here attending the BRICS Summit, as we are aware that those that will be coming from the BRICS partners, they will be coming with their investors, they will be coming with their corporates. And I think lastly, I could say we are also setting up different kinds of roundtables with the private sector, roundtables with the academia, roundtables with the embassies, making sure that we are entrenching the agenda of enterprise development in corporate fields, in our global partnership space, as well as in places of learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mandisa, for standing in. The Minister said she is going to be back shortly, but we have to unfortunately wrap up this formal section. But the Minister will be at the exhibition area and that very shortly again, and then we can continue the discussion in a more informal basis. Before we do that, I would like to ask Calvo again to come and give us his impressions and do the vote of thanks. Calvo, over to you.
Thanks, Darrell. Ladies and gentlemen, we have noted the comments that have been made, and I think as both business and government, we have a responsibility to ensure that the partnership between business and government continue to thrive, especially in the area of small business development. I've taken note of the comments that came from the BBC. I think we have been continuously engaged. We just happen not to have found the time within our diaries to have that roundtable discussion as to whether we can do more in terms of increasing our spend on SMEs. Of course, yes. And we are more than happy to have an engagement with you to see what opportunities are there for us to increase our spend on SMEs going forward. Again, Darrell, thank you very much to the PBF and to the African National Congress for allowing us to have the opportunity to have a discussion of this kind. It gives us great pleasure when we get inputs from other business people as to what we can do as big business to be able to foster economic growth in the country, especially in light of the challenges that we face of unemployment, inequality, and so forth. And lastly, I would like to thank Minister Zulu for having shared the stage with us. And we believe that the discussions are not going just to end now. We'll continue to have discussions going forward as the conference continues. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
And that all that remains now is for me to, on behalf of the business community and the PBF, thank MultiChoice for their...
Well, indeed, that is a wrap-up coming out from the Progressive Business Forum at the 54th ANC Elective Conference. For now, though, let's have a look at your headlines this morning. I'm Zweli Mkhize. Delegates from KZN, the largest contingent, are currently voting for the top 6 at the ANC's National Elective Congress at Nasrec, south of Johannesburg. The delegates from Gauteng, the Eastern Cape and the Limpopo provinces still have to vote. The DA has granted Patricia de Lille an extension until tomorrow to explain to the party why she should not resign as Cape Town mayor. News abroad, at least 26 people have been killed and others injured after Tropical Storm Kai-Tak brought heavy rains that triggered landslides in the Philippines. Well, all ANC provinces, with the exception of Gauteng, have cast their votes. The provinces, the 4th largest delegations of the conference, has 491 delegates at the party's national conference underway at Nasrec, south of Johannesburg. Earlier, there were concerns and frustration among some delegates as the voting process was going at a snail's pace. The results of the top 6 leadership elections are expected later today, while the election of the rest of the NEC will take place tomorrow. The outcome of the party presidential contest between Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and senior NEC member Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is the most eagerly awaited. Well, let's have a look at the nominations, shall we? Well, the race for the ANC's top job is between Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Zweli Mkhize and Nomvula Mokonyane publicly turned down their nominations. Yesterday, the elections agency announced the rest of the candidates vying for the top 6.
For the position of President, we've got Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, nominated by 1,469 branches across 6 provinces. And then we have Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, who has been nominated by 1,094 branches across 6 provinces. The next position is that of Deputy President. For this portfolio, we've got the following candidates: Comrade David Mabuza, nominated by 1,128 branches across 6 provinces. And we then have Comrade Lindiwe Sisulu, nominated by 619 branches across 4 provinces. We move on, comrades. The next position is that of National Chairperson. For this position, we have Comrade Gwede Mantashe, nominated by 1,499 branches across 7 provinces, followed by Comrade Nathi Mthethwa, nominated by 807 branches across 5 provinces. Next position is that of Secretary General. We have Comrade Senzo Mkhunu, nominated by 1,479 branches across 7 provinces. We then also have Comrade Ace Makashule, nominated by 930 branches across 5 provinces. The next position is that of Deputy Secretary General. We've got in this portfolio Comrade Jesse Duarte, nominated by 845 branches across 7 provinces, followed by Comrade Zingi Swalosi, nominated by 361 branches across 3 provinces. Last position is that of Treasurer General. We've got Comrade Paul Mashatile, nominated by 1,581 branches across 7 provinces. Lastly, we have Comrade Maite Nkwana Mashabani, nominated by 275 branches across 4 provinces.
And to unpack it, we are joined from our PE studios from political analyst Dr. Jolene Kotze-Steyn from the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, as well as a senior researcher at Institute for Global Dialogue, Sanusha Naidu, who joins us from our Durban studio. A very good morning to you both. Firstly, I'll start with you, Jolene. After delays and delays, it seems that the process is finally in motion. What exactly are we expecting from NASREC?
Well, you know, I think one of the key questions for me that will emerge, given all the delays and of course some of the controversies around the issues of credentials and of course the court rulings, it would be interesting for me to see after the voting has been completed whether the legitimacy of the entire process will indeed be accepted by all role players or all slates or all factions that are involved in this highly contested presidential race.
Definitely. And now for you, Sanusha, having a look at it from an economic perspective, do delegates actually realize that the future, if one can call it that, is literally in their hands?
Good morning. It's very difficult to tell because there's been such conflicting set of issues that have been underpinning this national elective conference. And I think that when you look at the way in which the members as well as the executive as well as the branches have been talking about this unity, this going forward. It's really about the internal dynamics, the internal leadership vacuums, the internal slates, the internal fragmentations, factions, etc. What we have seen, though, is that as news is emerging or rumors are emerging that there may be a victory by Cyril Ramaphosa, or there may be a sense of some level of certainty that's beginning to emerge with regard to how the whole question about credentials have been dealt with and the questions of branches that have not necessarily followed due process and the PEC of both KZN and Free State that have been disqualified. There's been a slight shift in the market. You saw the rand dip to below 13 rand to the dollar. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of seesawing. There's going to be a lot of toing and froing around what is the messaging that comes out of this. And as my colleague has rightly portrayed, it's the question of legitimacy. It's not just the legitimacy of whether it's accepted by the internal constituencies of the ANC, the outcome of this voting, not just for the top 6, but I think the broader NEC as well. But it's really legitimacy by the international markets, by international credit ratings, and even our bigger BRICS partners as well. I think we can't ignore the fact that there is a level at which they would also want to see what is the policy trajectory. And right up until now, there's been no discussion in terms of the policy trajectory. And that is what's key in terms of what needs to go forward for this elective conference. It's not just only about the election of the top 6 and the NEC and who gets in, but it's really about signaling a policy certainty, not just to the internal dynamics and the domestic market, but I think to the international market and our trade partners.
Definitely. Now, with that being said, Dr. Jolene, what essentially would it take for an emerging leader to actually unite the ANC, specifically with the 2019 elections just looming around the corner?
Well, you know, that has for me also been a very, very key question, because there has been a lot of focus on who is going to be the next leader. And I do think very often that those discussions happen in the absence of really trying to unpack what is the political project that's needed to try and unify a very, very factional ruling political party that has, as our local government elections have shown, lost some level of political trust due to a perceived lack of political efficiency, a delivery deficit, and so forth. And we've heard a lot of rhetoric on radical economic transformation. We've seen the announcement on free higher education for poor and working class people. We've seen almost a skating over very, very uncomfortable issues around corruption and state capture and wasteful expenditure and so forth. So I think given the new leadership and trying to bring forth that political project, the NEC in itself, as my colleague has also rightly noted, needs to set a very, very strong and realistic policy agenda to say, right, this is the basis that we are going to contest the 2019 elections on. In the absence of that, we can see a further decline of political trust, and we may, for example, see the very strong rural support base the ANC enjoys may then also eventually start declining, as it has in some of the urban areas.
Now, Sanusha, bringing you in here with regards to the radical economic policy, why does South Africa rather not have a stable economic policy?
It's very interesting when you look at the context of South Africa's economic policy making. I think we've had a number of plans. We've had from RDP to GEAR to ASKISA to the new growth plan.
Unfortunately,
and of course
Sanusha,
now we have the National Development
I'm
Plan.
going to interrupt you. Unfortunately, we're going to be crossing over to our Nasrec studio. We'll be crossing over to Liane and Peter Ndoro. They are taking us through a day 3. We'll come back to that.
Welcome back to us here at Nasrec, and as we stand here where the media section is, you wait for somebody to walk out just so you can get to talk to them and see how they're feeling. Well, what an honor it is to be joined now by Barbara Hogan. We just grabbed her for a quick one before she runs off. I know she's going into a plenary now. So nice to see you. Thank you for stopping and talking to us.
Thanks.
How are you feeling now? I'm feeling apprehensive.
The consequences of this is extremely proud of the way people have come and fought a good fight. I'm extremely proud of civil society, our judiciary, media, good South Africans standing up and saying we want an incorruptible government. And seeing that in our organization now is really, really inspiring. But let's not underestimate the kind of forces of nepotism and cronyism that we're dealing with. But I believe that the course towards correcting this country, we've started that road. And it's going to take some time. It's not just one election. It's going to take some time.
Your allegiance, is it lying with the Ramaphosa side? Secret to that, you're not a voting delegate at this point.
My capacity as a previous member of the NEC.
How are his chances looking at this point? Do you know? I mean, obviously it's very difficult to tell.
I cannot comment on that because I've not been involving myself in caucusing, in lobbying. I just think it's inappropriate because I'm not a voting delegate and whatever. But I still think he stands a good chance.
Which is very important because, I mean, as you talk about it, and I can see you're very emotional about it, because it is the ANC at the end of the day that is the party of choice for many South Africans, and they will continue to vote for the ANC. But they need to work for the people and not for themselves. And that, unfortunately, is the rhetoric that we've been feeling lately. Hence, that's what you've been feeling as well.
Yes, indeed. You know, that we will never have a conference like this that only focuses on elections, but focuses on the real issues that are affecting us. Our country, health, education, policing, everything is in real problems. And we, you know, as a leadership, we really, and as you know, a mass-based country that's a leadership that's rooted in a mass base, we've really got to start confronting the issues that are important, particularly the economy and jobs. You know, and this leadership thing, you know, it's unfortunate that it's happened, this leadership battle, but I think it's important because it's trying to reassert a set of values that we who came in 1990 and 94 stood for.
I want to talk about the legacy of your late husband, Ahmed Kathrada, and he's been brought up a lot, and we've been speaking about the veterans. And one of the saddest, I think, moments of this year was the passing of Kathy, but it's his I think heart that was the worst affected by this organization, and he was the one who was fighting and saying, guys, this cannot be right, nothing is right. Then we had the President Jacob Zuma saying that he doesn't believe that Ahmed Kathrada actually wrote the letter. I would like to get your response to that. Did he write this letter? Did he really feel this way about the organization and its president now, Jacob Zuma?
You know, I would like, after this conference, when all the heat is settled, to invite Jacob Zuma to come to my residence, and I will show him when Cassie actually started drafting the letters, the numerous drafts he went through. For months, he sat writing that letter. It was of his own volition, and it was terribly traumatic for him. This was the first time that he'd ever broken ranks on this scale, and Zuma must remember that when people, press and everybody was trying to bait Cassie in earlier years about whether Zuma was a suitable president, Cassie would say, I'm not going to comment on that. And he, you know, in a way, he didn't get involved in the fray. But for Zuma to say that Cassie was not capable of writing such a letter is so shocking and so disrespectful and indicative of a person who has lost his moral bearing completely.
You have to write a final closing note from you. If Cyril Ramaphosa, our deputy over, and of course Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma comes in as the new president of the ANC, where does that leave you, your membership, your allegiance?
You know, that is a decision I will have to take later on. I want to see what emerges out of this. I have not been active in ANC structures for a long time. I'm more active in civil society. And so I don't want to comment on that. You know, I want to sit and think and reflect. To be taking hasty decisions at the welfare of the country going forward.
Barbara Hogan, thank you for talking to us. Good luck for the next couple of days. Thank you very, very much for your time. Barbara Hogan talking to us here on the special broadcast at the SABC. Let me just show you behind me. This is where the briefing is going to be taking place. Gwede Mantashe should be addressing the media very, very shortly. It was meant to begin at 10 o'clock. It's about 20 minutes past 10. As soon as that comes live, we'll take that one and bring it to you. But right now, let's go back to Peter and find out who he's with in studio.
Leanne, thank you very much indeed. And, you know, what we've tried to do in covering this story is to get all sorts of voices in and amongst the politicians, the analysts that you've been hearing. Some of the politicians are here as well. And one face that you might recognize, back in the day, he was the actual spokesperson for the ANC. He was the Zizi Kodwa of his time, but more recently, the spokesperson of the Military Veterans Association, and also another voice for Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini campaign, and that of course is Carl Niehaus. Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you.
All right, how are you feeling? Are you feeling confident that your candidate is going to be victorious?
Well, yes, I do feel confident. I believe that we have the delegates here in the conference who will vote on behalf of and for Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. So let's wait for the outcome. You know, I don't want to speculate too much because I don't think that really helps us. But we've worked hard in this campaign. We came here with a large number of delegates who support Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, and I'm confident that at the end of this election process, also assuming that it will be free and fair, she will emerge as the president of the African National Congress.
Are you disappointed that this campaign, this round of getting to a leadership has had quite a divisive nature about it? And you just saw Barbara Hogan there, and we clearly see two different ANCs that are playing out at the moment. And that's partly because of this race that you've been a part of. Does that sadden you?
I think it is sad that there are such divisions in the ANC, but remember, these divisions are not just as a result of this particular presidential contestation of the ANC. They've been there before. I hope that through this process, and I'm very happy that we have a democratic process playing itself out, that we do not have an arranged leadership here, that we have empowered the delegates of the branches to come and make their democratic decision. I hope that out of this process, and especially also out of the discussions in the commissions on the very critical policy issues, the issues around radical economic transformation and organizational renewal, we will be able to begin to forge more unity. Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is in her bone and marrow a member of the African National Congress. She's been a member of the ANC since she was 16 years old. And she's been working in the struggle for so many decades. Now, that kind of person who has never been involved in the business community, who has always just seen herself as a servant of the people and a politician, I believe can bring the African National Congress together, because her first and most important interest is the ANC. She had said she will accept the outcome of this election contestation, whether she wins or loses, because ultimately she wants the ANC to win.
So now some people might say that you're subtweeting there when you're saying that she's never been in business, which means, of course, Cyril Ramaphosa has been in business, and you see that as a problem. Haven't you personally contributed to some of this venom that's been in this campaigns? Because you've often attacked the man in the campaign process instead of just telling the story of your candidate.
No, I have not attacked a man. I've attacked particular problems that I've seen with regards to the manner in which especially monopoly capital and white monopoly capital has tried to influence this campaign. Recently, I'm on record as having seriously criticized Bidvest for having gone and rented out luxury hotel space for a particular candidate's delegates. Now, that's the kind of thing that I'm concerned about. I'm one of those people who all the time, and no one can fault me on understanding the policies of the African National Congress. I'm also one of those people who've consistently said that radical economic transformation cannot just be the policy of one particular candidate. It has to be, because it was adopted in Mangaung in 2012, it has to be the policy of the African National Congress. When I criticized the use of a new name for political policy positions, such as New Deal, I was right to criticize it, because where does it come from? Radical economic transformation is grounded in the policy decisions of the ANC at its last National Elective Conference.
But if I watch the Progressive Business Forum, I see a lot of these characters that you call white monopoly capital supporting the ANC, being partnering the ANC. So you can't isolate it to one candidate over another. The ANC as a grouping has embraced them.
Well, we have to embrace the business sector. That is important. But the question is, in what manner do we embrace the business sector? Do we engage with the business sector in such a way that we look as if we've actually become part of them, and that we are actually peddling their interests within the African National Congress? Or do we engage the business sector from a principled position which understands that the African National Congress has to be a pro-poor party, that it has to be rooted in the Freedom Charter of 1956, that it still has to talk about that the people shall share in the wealth of the country, and that the people shall own the land that they live and work on? That is the important questions. I'm very happy if the business community engage with Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. It is critical. But they must understand that she will approach them from a position of a commitment to the pro-poor policies of the African National Congress.
So what do you say to people who say that Carl Niehaus has perhaps weighed down Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini's campaign, that your presence there might have actually hurt her more than it helped her?
Well, I think look at the campaign. And look at the successes that we've scored in this campaign, and the manner in which this campaign has become a critical part of this election process. If I weighed it down, that would not be the case. I believe that my involvement had been a positive one, and I believe that my principal, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, and those around her have expressed appreciation for the work that I've done. I have committed myself in a professional way to this campaign because I believe that we need radical economic transformation in South Africa, and that this conference is a critical watershed moment. Here we will decide whether we go with what I would call unhealthy association with white monopoly capital, or we go with policies that are true to the character of the African National Congress, which is radical economic transformation. And that is why I'm here, because I want to support the ANC remaining what it should be, an organization of the people, for the people, and specifically inclined to support and empower the poor.
All right, Carl Niehaus, thank you very, very much indeed for spending a little bit of time with us.
Pleasure.
The Secretary General of the ANC, the outgoing SG, is about to make some announcements, and hopefully it's kind of where we are in terms of the voting process. But thank you very, very much indeed for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
All right, let's cross to, I think Leanne is standing outside that media hall right now. Leanne? All right, okay. So we're hoping that the Secretary General is going to be able to share with us where we are in terms of the voting. I know that there was 1 or 2 provinces that were left to share their thoughts, to vote. And then after that, well, we're hoping that the counting will happen, and then we will get a result sooner or later. But Leanne, you're right in front of the media room where SG Gwede Mantashe is about to make some announcement.
Yes, indeed, Peter, he did. He walked through, and the media, of course, jumping on him. I was a part of the pack of the media that jumped on him just to get a comment before he takes to the podium. But he wasn't going to say a word. All he was saying is, I asked him the question, how much longer? When do you think the results are going to be announced? And he said, we're into the final stages of voting. So what that means, not too sure, but I'm sure he'll give us the press conference now and be able to get a lot more detail about that. Zizi Kodwa has joined him. So they've all gone inside there. So let's join them. We'll let the camera walk in there. We'll just give you a sense of the huddle of the media that suddenly happens as soon as a press conference is about to happen. You cannot believe the media contingency here. This conference is being covered like no one can believe. I mean, I'm sure you generally are understanding it from whether you turn onto any radio station, any television station, if you open social media, you can see that this is all anybody is talking about right now. All the radio stations are around this particular area, and this is where the press conference is about to take place. So that's just to give you an idea of the behind-the-scenes view of this particular media contingency that takes place here at these press conferences. So as Gwede and Zizi take their seats and get ready to speak, let's take this live.
We just before we start, we just want to do a roll call. There are persons very important to the SG. As he presents to you for the last time, he would like to see them present. Jan is here, SG.
What is Jan?
He's sitting right at the back.
Okay, Jan, okay.
Who else, SG?
Where is...
Stephen Grotes.
Where is Goli?
Goli Mgambi.
Where is Goli?
He's here, is there?
Where is Goli? Are you here? Okay.
Natasha.
Where is Stephen Grotes? Where is Stephen Grotes? SG.
It's not here.
Not here.
Hajra.
Hajra.
Kanita. Where's Kanita? We're just giving a roll call. All the people are very famous to the ages. Immediately come to mind.
Where's Natasha?
Natasha. Matuma.
Oh. Where's Matuma? Where's Matuma? Oh. Yeah, where's Tabat?
Thank you, eh?
Tabat.
We have a special guest, Chester missing. Please, Conrad, please rise.
Hey, Chester. How are you? I have not met you for a long time.
when the SG retires, he will join the ANC Youth League. Thank you very much, members of the media. Thank you very much. Our apologies for a few minutes delay. The outgoing Secretary General of the ANC is also the convener of what is called Steering Committee, which is responsible for the overall coordination and running of the conference. He had a meeting this morning. He just came from that meeting. Yesterday, he presented what we call the organizational report, which is the state of the organization from the last conference up to date. But also, today, being the last time as the outgoing Secretary General, he addresses you in that capacity. His name is Samson. The other name is Gwede. The surname is Mantashe. Now, the initials makes him the SG for life, because even if he's not longer the SG of the ANC, his initial remains SG. SG Mantashe?
Thank you very much. I don't think this is a media briefing per se. It's actually a gathering with you as journalists. Express my appreciation of the time I spent with you. Difficult times, sometimes you ask questions that the intention is clear to put me in the corner. I will miss that. I make a commitment that once a new Secretary General is elected, I will bring him here and introduce him to you. How you deal with that new Secretary General is not my business, really. But I will give you that new Secretary General, I will bring that, sir. You will allow me to do that. Because if I don't do that, it will be like missing on duty and therefore just disappear, and you all say, where did this man go? I will bring that new Secretary General, and anybody who phones me, I will tell you that, why do you phone me? I introduce the new Secretary General to you. Thank you very much. It was nice working with you, difficult sometimes, tense in some moments, but we enjoyed all the time. I always tell people that somebody who taught me something about politics much earlier in life said, never fight the media and never fight the church. Those are old institutions in society. I'm keeping to that. I don't have time to fight the media and fight the church. I don't have that time. Even when people drag us through the mud, we stand up and go on. The run-up to this conference was particularly difficult. We saw many things that have happened to all individual people who are standing for elections. And I always remind the people that, history has this tendency of repeating itself. When Verwoerd was assassinated in Parliament, his second in command was Ben Schoeman. Ben Schoeman never became the successor. And he didn't become the successor because the Securocrats dirtied him, discredited him, and he gave up the contest. And they gave us P.J. Foster. And that's where we were. And I saw signs of those dirty tricks as we're coming to this conference on everyone who was contending and contesting any position. And we said that is what politics is all about. We're happy to be here. We presented our last organizational report yesterday. That organizational report gave the incoming NEC feedback on every issue and where we stand on any issue. But central to the message was that if the ANC is flat-footed on any issue, it leaves a vacuum for the leadership of society. The ANC must be able to express a view on everything. It doesn't matter how painful it is. And in the plenary, went through all the difficult issues that we're confronted with, whether it was the Nganda case, whether it was the public protector's report, whether it was the Concord judgment. You can think of it, the current debate on state capture. We said on all these issues, the ANC must take firm decisions and provide leadership to society. If the ANC is in doubt, society runs out of leadership, and everybody can howl and lead the society to any direction. And that was the essence of that report. We did analysis of all our provinces, and the main task remaining is to ensure that we do go back to provinces, strengthen them. If a number of provinces come to a conference with court cases and judgments, you must know that something is not well. There's going to be a volume of work in the jurisprudence about the ANC. It is not well for the ANC. We looked into our subcommittees. Many of them work well. That is where the bulk of the work of the ANC happened. And basically, that was it. As I said, the main purpose today was to say to you, thank you very much, goodbye, farewell. I'm not going to be Secretary General in a few hours. Actually, when I step out of that conference, I will be unemployed. If you want an editor, I'm available. There you are.
Thank you very much, outgoing SG. Sounds like a fairy tale that we meet today and the SG is bowing out. On behalf of myself and my team SG, I would like to thank you. It's the last time I share this platform with you.
Will you be fired as well?
No, with the Secretary General of the ANC called Gwede. There can never be another Gwede. There's only one Gwede in the ANC.
That's true.
I really appreciate I really want to appreciate the time we spent together.
There's only one Gwede anyway. You never came across anybody called Gwede. The only Gwede I know is myself. There's only one Gwede.
There were difficult moments. There were times where I also thought that Gwede himself has thrown hands in the air. I would call him and ask Gwede, SG, what do we do? He says, just say anything, Zizi. By that time, I will know that SG Naye is like Udini. SG, what do I say? Because I consult him on many things. SG is difficult. What do I say? Just say anything. I will miss those moments, Comrade SG. Thank you very much. Questions? You are now allowed questions. I know people who are very close to Clement. No, before that, where's Matlatsi? Can we start with you?
SG, I mean, what was your message in terms of your assessment right now and looking on to the 2019 elections? What were you saying to the delegates in terms of the chances of the ANC? And secondly, did you have any concrete things that you said about the relationship that must be there between the president and the NEC going forward?
Clement, are you crossing live now? Oh, okay.
SG, thanks. You spoke about how this conference must take decisions and provide leadership, and you're mentioning state capture and Gandla. To what extent did those affect the organization? Can you please let us in on that? And SG, I imagine it must be frustrating acknowledging the impact of state capture, yet you have got the president of the ANC who denies the existence of this. Thanks.
Just pass it to Jan. People who really remember SG for everything.
Can I say?
Yes.
Jan Lange from Rapport. I think the judgments of the Constitutional Court about the powers and the obligations of MPs have possibly changed the balance of power or the relationship between the ANC caucus in Parliament and the NEC, which is traditionally the highest authority in the ANC when this conference is not sitting. Do you think that, how do you see this going forward? Is there a need to reconfigure the position of the caucus within the ANC structures?
Hajra, I know you're going to ask about Zimbabwe. No, he's going to ask about Zimbabwe.
How many questions?
That's the last one.
How many questions does Hajra have? She may ask four.
Just ask one.
She may ask. How many Hajra?
Thank you, SG. Hajra Marjorie from Power 987. It's been a long time that you've been in office. You've served in the office for over 10 years.
Exactly 10 years.
And we've read parts of your organizational report. We've had many conversations with you over the last few years. A lot of your experiences as Secretary General were shared by the former Secretary General, Kgalema Motlanthe. So what is your advice to the incoming Secretary General on how to fix the ANC to ensure its survival going forward? And are you concerned that if your organizational reports go unsolved, like the former organizational reports went ignored to some degree, that the ANC may not survive for very much longer as a governing party? Thanks.
Please answer those, SG.
The 2019 elections, you always ask this question, what are the chances of the ANC? And actually, it's quite a strange question. Let me tell you how strange it is. It's because you want us to come to you and say, the ANC is finished now, it disappears, in 2019 it will not be around. I don't know how to expect that. The reason that we call National General Council, we convene, policy conference, we come to the national conference, all those are efforts to re-strengthen the organization. Where we have lost ground, we want to regain the lost ground. Now, anybody who asks us the question, what are the chances in 2019? Actually, is that we're working for regaining the lost ground. As we saw in the local government elections, we want to regain that. We don't want to be relegated into a rural party. We want to regain the metros and want to be a strong ANC. So anybody who asks the question, whether 2019 you have doubts or not, we can't have doubts about 2019. We must work hard to win them well and increase our support, improve from where we were in the 2016 elections. In other words, in the theme of the organizational report was that the ANC has a duty to recover a new growth trajectory. And if it doesn't recover that, there will be problems going forward. Like any other organization, every organization, it doesn't matter what organization, grows, peaks, matures, and when it matures, it stagnates and it declines. If it doesn't have a new growth trajectory to kickstart new growth, it actually declined to disappearance. And we're aware of that. We're looking into it all the time. We talk about it. We're not hanging our hands in the air to say, come the end of life, let's finish ourselves off. That is not what we're doing. We want a better ANC because a better ANC is good for the country. You know, I looked into preparation of this conference. Even investors talk about this conference with the hope that there will be this outcome, the rand strengthens. When it goes the other way, the rand weakens. It means that the ANC is recognized as a trailblazer and a leader of society. And we must not take that for granted, we must continue earning it. That's what we said. Relation between the president and the NSC, I don't know. What should that be? The president is the president of the NC. He's elected in a conference here together with the NSC. The people who are elected separately are the officials. 6 officials are elected first, then the rest of the NSC. And it is that top 6 plus the remainder of the NSC, plus ex-official members that constitute the National Executive Committee of the ANC. Now, when you say what is the relationship, it's a different matter. What is important is for the ANC to tighten the way it relates to the government. It elects and deploys people to government, and it must be concrete about relating to those people, re-strengthening the concept of the ANC being the strategic center of power. And that's what we should grapple with, and the new NEC must have the task of actually putting content to that. And therefore the question of engaging and consulting is quite key in the leadership. I always tell Ziz that Ziz, power is about being able to allow others around you to exercise it on your behalf. Once power is overly centralized, it becomes dangerous to the incumbent. Once you allow people around you to exercise power on your behalf, it becomes quite exciting to lead. But all the time, leadership is not just about science and profession, it is also about art. And the art is about the personality of the individual. And that you cannot send anybody to school to change the personality. It is in the person, himself or herself. And that's it. The Nkandla issue and the state capture, and you are making a number of allegations there. All we are saying is that anything that happens in government when the ANC is leading impacts directly on the ANC. Whether the ANC is part of it or not, if we say we're not part of it, we wash our hands, we do that at our own peril. Anything that happens in government, if departments don't manage a project in Nkandla, that will impact on us. And it becomes an issue that depends on the narrative if we are not generous with information and be able to break down the Nkandla expenditure. Because all of you develop a narrative that says so much amount on the homestead. I can tell you that that money can be broken down. So much on the homestead, 71 million on the homestead, the rest is outside and around the homestead. But in the narrative, there's no such a breakdown. It impacts on the ANC. It impacts on the ANC. And when we came back there, we said the main issue about that project is not whether the residents of the president should be upgraded. That's not the issue. The issue is inflation of prices, and therefore that translates into losing the state coffers. And that is the issue that we said day one. We continue saying that. We are saying it is the ANC that is responsible to engage with that issue. On the state capture, we have a debate that issue, I can tell you now, and we confirmed that in the conference, is that it's one debate that continues to divide us, because, and we said, it divides us, but it imposes a responsibility on the leadership of the ANC to engage in that debate, find a common, coherent, and a cohesive response to it. Because it's facing us, it is there, we can hide our head and say it does not exist. It exists, it is debated by society. The ANC cannot be seen to be flat-footed on the matter. And that is the responsibility facing the new leadership of the ANC. Judgments, that is your observation now, Jan. You state it as a fact that judgments tilted the balance of forces between the caucus and the NEC. I'm sure you think that Jackson is a chief whip. What you forget is that he's a member of the NEC and a member of the National Working Committee of the ANC. So there can be no tilting of balance between caucus and the NEC. There's no such a thing, because NEC members are in parliament. They are deployed in different roles, and they play those roles. And therefore, when you say it is therefore must reconfigure the relationship, the ANC deploy cadres to parliament. That is the primary deployment. When they arrive, they are given different responsibilities. Others become ministers, deputy ministers, speakers, deputy speakers, chief whip, and whips of committees and chairs of committees. That is a responsibility given to people deployed in parliament by the ANC. So there can be no reconfiguration of the relationship between the caucus and the ANC. That's why the issue of a debate that was artificial, in my view, of conscience, follow your conscience, party line must be ignored, was a mischievous debate, actually. very mischievous, because you want to constitute the ANC into a gathering of free agents. There's no such an organization that allows itself to be a gathering of free agents who follow their conscience. Otherwise, we must have no conference, we must have no NEC, we must have no structural decision. That debate was a mischievous debate. You don't counterpose conscience and revolutionary morality to consciousness. You don't do it. Conscience and revolutionary morality guide every individual cadre. But at the end of the day, the party structures take decisions, and those decisions must guide the line of action for its cadres. And that is the issue. So reconfiguration of the relationship, I don't know how that is, of the ANC reconfiguring relationship with itself. It doesn't work that way. Because it is cadres of the movement. If Jackson says something, don't isolate him from the ANC and say, Jackson this, and therefore the NEC this. Jackson is a member of the NEC, is a member of the National Working Committee, is a chief whip of the majority party in parliament, and that's it. And when we introduced the concept of an activist parliament, everybody laughed at us. What is this thing of an activist parliament? An activist parliament, you see it on how it handled this SABC case. You see it when it is handling the ESCOM case. You are going to see more and more of it. Lastly, experiences. In my report, when you get it, you're going to see that there's an area that is dedicated to the SGO. It's the first time we had that. That is a handover report to the new SG. Here are the vices. Remain accessible to members, allow them to shout at you, allow them to insult you, allow them to say many things about you, but allow them to access you if you are SG. If you are not accessible and responsive, you will kill the organization. That's the advice I gave. And I said, don't prepare to be an institution. You never pretend to be an institution. You are the Secretary General of the African National Congress. There is no institution called Secretary General. Secretary General is Secretary General of the NEC, of the ANC. That's why you report regularly in writing to the NWC, to the NEC. And the incoming secretary must remember that. And another advice I gave him is that you must get your feet quickly on the ground in terms of your relationship with the journalists. I advise them, talk to journalists. Others are going to irritate you. If you are getting angry, they're going to provoke you deliberately. Avoid being angry. And the other advice I gave the incoming secretary, I said, if a journalist writes something that is wrong, pick up a phone or him. Hey, hello, what is this on your paper? Yeah? I know many of you have heard that. Yeah? Many of you have heard that. Yeah? How are you? Hey, where did you get this? It's wrong. It doesn't. These are the facts. Why do you write a story without balancing it? That is your responsibility. Chase them, engage them. Don't run away and disappear in front of journalists. Talk to them. And that was the advice I gave, and I will continue giving him that advice. Don't be angry. Don't be angry. But phone them if they report something that is out of place and they are wrong.
Andisiwe Makinana. Adrian Bazon.
Ayo.
Winston. Yes. No, there's a mic here.
Now, wait. A BBC must be given a chance. You give way to the BBC.
Thank you. SG, when you look back, what was the lowest moment in this period for you, and what was the highest? And what's the most memorable thing that President Zuma has said to you or you've said to him? Thank you.
Oli Mgambi. Now, I'm sure we are expecting an address there. Not a question. Only.
Thanks, Zizi. SG, as a parting shot, you know, I watched you with keen interest yesterday.
There is no parting shot. I'm coming back.
I watched you at that hall when we were let in, and you read the rule book of the party in terms of the nomination process. And very strangely, or should I say interestingly, I saw a very senior party member of the ANC right after you standing up and saying, this is a conference of delegates, and this conference will not defy these delegates. Is unity still possible in this party, Secretary General? And what would be your advice to the new leadership coming through, particularly the President, in trying to unite this party? Thanks.
SG, it's Calvin Whittles from the Mail and Guardian. I'm over here, sir.
Where is no, on your left.
You
Where is Matuma?
No, he deployed me here, it's fine.
Oh, okay. Proceed.
Okay, SG, the question on the organizational report, following the 2016 elections, the assessment of how the provinces performed, especially in the Eastern Cape and Gauteng, was done. And I wanted to know how much, what was your assessment of the ANC's election machinery in the organizational report heading to the 2019 elections, and whether the alliance was a setback. And then you released a diagnostic report in which you described increasing levels of ill discipline, deterioration of political consciousness, and a bad state of the party in its provinces. How much responsibility do you take personally as Secretary General for the increasing ill discipline and the state of the branches and the tension between the different provinces?
That's Governor Gay. Your hand was up many times.
That arise from factionalism in terms of the gatekeeping and the way that you've structured the registration process and so on for delegates. Can you just reflect on that, whether you feel, in terms of stake politics in particular, what you feel about these efforts? Have they gained traction within the organization? Have you seen the impact of these efforts playing out in the processes and the meetings like this conference, and what needs to be done going further? Thank you.
I'm going to give you another round as a bonus. Yes, it's a bonus. It's my last official briefing of the media. This is looking at me, I said, no, it's not. I've Mantashe it. I have Mantashe it. I'm giving you another round. So, what is wrong?
No, President.
You know, when you work in an organization like the ANC, one of the most futile exercises is to try to isolate the lowest moments and the highest moments, because it's an exercise in futility, in the sense that the work that is done in the ANC has the capacity of cancelling itself out. At one point, I was working in ESCOM board. And one thing I learned there was something called commodity price linked electricity prices. I don't know if you've ever heard of that concept. If you are in chrome, when the price of chrome is up, you pay higher price of electricity. When the price of chrome comes down, you're paying less for electricity. Working in the ANC is like that. Okay, you do well, the next moment you do so bad that you feel like you are the most useless person. The next time you pick it up, and therefore an exercise of lowest moments and highest moments is actually immaterial. Now, you want us to tell you the confidential exchanges between myself and President Zuma. We could as well call the press briefing and exchange those things. Because as you work, it's not a personal relationship, it's a professional relationship. So you try to keep it at that level, because if you don't keep it at that level, you are likely to commit more serious mistakes in trying to appease one another at a personal level. So I think your questions, let's park them for now. Rules of elections, where is it called? Oh, my great deal. Okay. And then a senior member come out, is it called? When a conference, one of the responsibilities of the conference is to elect leadership. Now, one of the things that you can do when you want to correct the last few votes is to be populist. Okay? It's populist. It's not a question of division. It's populism that is intended to win 3 or 4 additional votes to what you already have. That's how I interpreted that reaction yesterday. That's all, and I kept it at that. I relegated it to populism that is actual opportunistic, trying to get immediate votes, quick. And it happens when you go to the elections. But the reality of the matter that we're discussing is whether delegates should go to the voting station with a list. When they were saying that is what should happen, I resigned myself to say, we don't like slates, but we promote them. Okay. I can't live with my conscience when sitting in a conference of the ANC. I take a decision that branches delegates must go with a list to the voting station and only vote for what is in the list. That is slate politics in action. I hope that the majority of delegates will not do that. They will go to the voting station, go through the ballot paper, vote for comrades that they think will add value and contribute positively to the ANC. So that debate is not closed, it will continue, but the correct part and the good part of it is the fact that it is a debate that was opened and debated openly in a plenary of delegates, so that as they go back, it will continue. It's a debate that must never be closed, because slate politics weaken an organization. Slate politics marginalize good activists. Slate politics make the organization have a narrow pool to fit for leadership. And my own view is that I believe in that. If a person come out there and shout at that and say delegates, what they don't understand is that conference is the decision-making body. It's not about the Constitution. It is itself a creature of the Constitution. So if you undermine provisions of the Constitution because you think you have an instant power given to you by being in a conference, you are committing a mistake, you are going to commit many problems, and the organization is to run into trouble. Assessment of the provinces and the performance in the local government elections. Many people, because we lost PE, always list Eastern Cape up there. I don't know how many of you know that in terms of performance, the Eastern Cape had the smallest decline, following a marginal increase in KZN, and the smallest decline was in the Eastern Cape. So PE doesn't make it Eastern Cape. It's PE, we lost PE. The Eastern Cape performed well overall. Actually, there were provinces that lost 15%, 13%, and above 10%. There are few of them. Eastern Cape didn't lose that. So when you exchange Eastern Cape and Gauteng because of the metros, I know that you are not giving us an analysis, you are giving us an opinion. And I give you the right to have an opinion on things, but it is not an analysis. We lost PE, we did other things, we did better in other areas. We have Gauteng, we lost metros. That's where I see a big threat, which I mentioned when I said we can't afford an ANC that becomes a rural party. That talks to the heart of the economy, Gauteng. Because if we decline in Gauteng, we are going to be relegated into a rural party. We can't afford that. Simple. The diagnostic report, how much personal responsibility? When I'm serving in a team, I also take personal responsibility for anything and any failure that happens in that team. Because every leader who gets into a collective brings personal attributes to the collective. Now, if there are problems, you have a responsibility because your personal attribute as an individual should have helped you contribute more in the performance of that collective. So I take that part of the responsibility. Trying to deal with factionalism and the electoral process, you would see in the process that we've done this time around, we did everything to undo factions. I don't say we've eliminated them, very strong sign, bad habits die hard, but we've done many things that are actually unique and protect the organization. We're hoping that out of this exercise, the ANC will come out better. The bonus round, Sese.
Carol.
Hi, thanks. It's Carol Payton from Business Day. SG, there is a conference resolution which says that those who take the ANC to court over internal matters should be, I think, expelled from the party. That obviously hasn't happened. What is the conference's feeling on that now, and what is the way forward on that issue? Thanks.
Shahan.
SG Shahan from ENCA. I have two short questions for you. Who has been your biggest challenge within the party?
Come again.
Who has been your biggest challenge within the party, SK?
My biggest challenge?
Yes.
A person?
Yes, a person. Not a thing. Not a scandal, not the journalists, but who? Because you've worked with so many people.
I think you have an answer to that question, I can see.
Has President Jacob Zuma managed to inspire you at all during his tenure?
To inspire you at all. Ngalwa, there's a mic here, right in front.
SG, it's Busiso Ngalwa from the Daily Dispatch. I think this question was asked by Mahlatsi and Milton, but you've done well to avoid it.
A Daily Dispatch? Wait. Branch 51.
Yes, Ward 51. Now, SG, but my question is, I mean, you've been frank in terms of talking about the breakdown of your relationship with President Zuma. In your interview with the City Press, you spoke about how you now only meet in official meetings of the ANC, but there was a time when you had access to him. What I want to find out is that, at what point did it deteriorate? But more importantly, to what extent did that affect the functioning or the work of the ANC officials extending to the NWC and the NEC? But also, Ngwati, I think you've said this is your last press briefing, so be frank. What would your... Don't Mantashe on this one. What but just lastly, SG, what are the lessons to be learned by the incoming leadership in terms of how they manage their relationship? Thanks. Just lastly, Ngwati, this is the last, you will no longer be a full-time official. What will you be doing with your time?
I will be farming. I will be farming, Ngalwa.
Mos TV, Frelimo. Mike, this side.
Thank you very much. I was overtaken, but I'm very eager to know what time do you expect? I believe that you have voted already for the top 6. What time do you expect the results, more or less, to come out, to be announced? Thanks.
No, you can't do it.
Comrade SG, sorry to interrupt you one more time, but you've been nominated to be chairperson of the ANC. So like the current chairperson is doing in Parliament, will you also be using bouncers to get rid of people you don't like? I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Dankie, sharp.
Thank you,
Okay,
sharp.
one puppet to another, Zizi. Thanks, bye.
Difficult to follow that. Richard Callan, long-time columnist for the Mail and Guardian. You've put a lot of emphasis on the branches and branch autonomy and independence and all of that in recent months. Here are the branches and their representatives, but your organisation seems determined to stop us, the media and columnists and analysts, from talking to them. Are you comfortable with that? Is it really healthy for the organisation, its media relations? And I can remember back in the day of Mafeking and Polokwane and certainly Stellenbosch, where one could wander around and talk freely with delegates, and that seemed to be a happier day for both sides. Do you think it's time to revisit this paranoia?
Yeah, let me start with the last two.
Yeah.
What did you just?
No. Chester was just complimenting you. Don't answer him. He's wishing you to be the Speaker of the National Assembly.
No, he asked if I would use bouncers. If I ever become a speaker, I may use soldiers. How do you like that, Chester? Yeah? You bring the whole army into Parliament and deal with people who are giving us problems. Would you like that? Yeah. So we're talking about an unlikely event of me becoming the speaker, you know. It's an unlikely event. That's the first thing you must consider. I'm not a government person. I'm a party political activist all my life. So it will be difficult for me to adjust to that life first, let alone accessing the bouncers. I will have to adjust myself to that life at the late age. It's going to be difficult. Media speaking freely to delegates. Look at this scenario of we have a conference and then it becomes a festival of journalists talking to press delegates. And then allow press delegates to have the debates they are having in plenary with journalists. Let me tell you how that normally destroys the essence of conversation. Sometimes many of the journalists phone me and say, branches in this area say this, what do you say? I normally give a standard answer. They took their grievance to you to convey to me. Are you a post box? No, I'm not a post box. Now, why do you want me to respond to something that has not arrived in my office, that has been planted in a journalist and come to me? If we allow that in a conference, it's a formula for collapsing the conference. Let me give you an example. You know, during the National Policy Conference, many people ran to this center and gave informal briefings to the journalists. It contaminated the policy conference from time to time. Seriously contaminated the policy conference, because before we discuss issues there, it is already on the floor of conference. Joel did this, and so and so. And that is the danger to the conference itself of just having a free-for-all access to the delegates. Communication should be structured and be regulated so that it gives you results. It's not a question of just talking to one another. It is about engaging on a communication. If you add your own issues, add them. But the intention can never be to allow a free-for-all. When we give you official communication, you say, no, that is not true because delegates so X, Y, and Z. Half the time, those delegates will give you what is an input to a debate in conference and will be giving you the results of the discussion. By the time we give you the result of the discussion, you will be stuck with the input of individual delegates in the debating conference. So just imagine the risk of that to the conference itself. Let's leave that. When do you expect the results of the top 6? I'm not in the Electoral Commission. I'm a candidate, by the way. Now, the disadvantage of being a candidate is that you don't access even the electoral area, because if you are seen close to that area, they can suspect that you're trying to manipulate the result. So I can't answer that question. Okay, when to expect the results of the top 6? Electoral Commission will tell us when they're ready and give the results. And I'm sure Ziz will send a word to you that results are going to be announced now.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
That's how it works. And the reason for that is that we don't want to be in charge of a process that determines our own fate. Allow it to go its course. If you're fired, you're fired. That's it. That's how it is. At what point did the relationship break down? Lessons for the new leadership. I can answer that because your question, Ngalwa, head of the Daily Dispatch, is that it assumes that leaders of the ANC could keep diaries about their relationship. We don't do that. We disagree on this, we move on, we agree on 10 other things, we move on, we disagree on another issue, we move on. We don't compile a diary of disagreements. So I can't say at this point there was a breakdown. No, there's no such. We have come to this conference, handed over as outgoing leaders of the ANC, both myself and President Zuma. That's what we've done here. And I can tell you, because of the negative narrative that has been thrown at President Zuma, one thing that you will never appreciate, we appreciate it better, is the deep knowledge of the man about the ANC. Okay? And that's what we're about when we're in the party organizational processes. Deep understanding of ANC experience, history, and a person being a repository of many issues that happen to the ANC, including anecdotes about particular milestones in the ANC. That is the part that is hidden to the public because it doesn't make news. And one time I was talking to one of the senior political reporters of a newspaper. I said to them, you know, the problem is that you don't understand between the work you're doing and the work I'm doing. You're selling news, I'm running a party. It's not the same. Now, at that point, you will not understand the positive aspects and the experience you derive in working with President Zuma at an individual level. I tell people all the time that the 10 years in the ANC has improved my knowledge and understanding that no university can ever give me that knowledge, that experience. That means you can take me on top of Harvard or on top of Oxford. They will not give me the experience and the learning I went through in the ANC for 10 years. It's practical. And actually, next year, I will be writing a book. Any of you can offer to be a writer, come for interview. I will have to interview and say, right, what's your view on this? What is your ideological outlook? No, no, no. You are contaminating my book. Get out of the way, so forth. Because working in that collective with President Zuma at the head gave me a lot of experiences, okay? And those experiences, I don't focus on negatives. I put a lot of emphasis on the positives because they make my life better. And the lesson for the new leadership is that when you are leadership, when you throw your hands in the air because there are problems, you are giving yourself a luxury you do not have. Don't have time to throw your hands in the air. Confront the issue, engage, have tense meetings, go through them, take decisions and move on. Get criticized for not doing X, Y, and Z. Who has been my biggest challenge? I've answered the question of whether President Zuma inspired us in whatever way. One of the things we will know is that you can have all the problems with President Zuma, but you will not have a problem of the ability to talk to the masses of our people. Even when there's a problem, if you throw him into a meeting with the masses of the people, then it changes. And that is a rare gift. Sometimes you can be intellectual and lose that aspect of work, very critical for the ANC. So the point I'm making is that when you say who has been my biggest challenge, my biggest challenge is people who do not engage in the organization take us to court. That is my biggest challenge. I want people to engage the ANC. The ANC must fail to resolve the issue, and people must have the right to take us to court. But when people use courts as the point of grievance of first instance, that is the biggest frustration. And it takes me to the first question, that those who take the ANC to court, what is the way forward? Actually, there's a big debate in the ANC that what do you do if people take the ANC to court? You can't have one answer. There are people who do everything and anything that should be done internally and get frustrated at the end of the day, take the ANC to court. When it comes to me, I grant them that right. If we don't resolve their problem, they can go to court. Those who rush to court, we should be able to deal with those situations. Sometimes it is them who take us to court. Sometimes it is us who frustrate them to court. And that's what we should consider all the time. The way forward is listen to the problems of the members, address them, resolve them. If you do that, there will be fewer cases that end up in court. That's it.
Thank you very much. That brings us to an end. Before I allow SG to take selfies, because that will be the bonus. Somebody's making noise.
No.
Somebody's making noise this side. Please, I'm not taking any further hands. I just want to, again, members of the media, to thank you for the mutual respect the Secretary General has enjoyed over a period. I trust that you'll do the same of whoever is a new spokesperson in the SG. Accord them a responsibility of mutual respect, but at the same time, give them the tough time you have given us as well. But once more, I'm certain that you'll miss a name called Gwede Mantashe.
Right, so that's the outgoing Secretary General Gwede Mantashe saying that's his last presser as SG, but you never know with this game and the way things are going at the moment.
But certainly as his capacity as SG.
But having a moment, I think, with the media that he's learned to love and hate over the 10 years that he's been Secretary General. A decade in a key position in a party that's turning 106 tomorrow, next year.
Next year. I mean, he's had a pretty tough job. He really has. I mean, he's been the one that's been facing the media, talking through a lot of the stories that have been coming through during the 10-year tenure of President Jacob Zuma. And let's not forget that it is exactly 10 years ago today that President Jacob Zuma was instated into the position of the president of the ANC. So it was on this day. So he came in the same time. So they've been together the entire time. I am looking forward to reading that book that he was looking for, I must say. But just the story that's come through now that I'm reading fast and furiously on the wires, and it's been confirmed by a couple of news agencies. We're just waiting for that official confirmation to say that the voting has now ended, that all the provinces, the PECs, the NEC, everybody has voted, and that counting should begin if it hasn't already started. So now is once again, that waiting game, but I think we're about an hour and a half, perhaps 2 hours away from that. We've got Melanie with us here. Melanie, if we talk about now counting, how long does that take? I mean, what are we thinking?
How long is a piece of string? You know, it depends.
It can take,
I mean, it won't be. You know, it won't be soon. Certainly, I don't think we can expect anything before lunchtime. They've said that they're only reconvening at 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
So we know there's nothing going to happen before 12, you know. And then one needs to see if they're actually finished. I mean, the big question is going to be if there's suddenly 5 votes difference or 10 votes difference in some of those key positions. Because then they're not going to announce it.
Okay,
you know?
so they will not announce something like that.
I don't think so. Because
so what happens then?
They have to recount, of course. It's like any election. You know, they'll recount most probably and recount, you know. And it's going to be a really interesting scenario. I think even, I mean, I'm saying 5 now. I mean, that's just, I don't know how you deal with that, you know. I think even if you're getting below sort of 200, you know, 150. Look, technically, 1 vote. And that person wins. That's according to the Constitution. But I think they've never, ever, you know, thought in their wildest dream that something like that can happen. And so if there's like, I think anything under 200 is contestable, you know, and I think they won't like that. So I think, and that's, you know, as we've been looking at things, it could be that close or even closer. So I think we'll have a recount. Etc. So I certainly, we will not have something before 12 o'clock unless they suddenly bus everybody in, and then we'll know because we'll see the delegates coming in.
Yeah.
But so I think nothing before 12 o'clock.
Nothing before 12 or even 2, because
I think so.
I saw something doing the rounds that the delegates have now they've been sort of told they can go and rest now, because I mean it's been a long night for them.
Exactly, because they've been voting through the night.
Yeah.
You know, which is an odd thing to do, because as you know, last night it was announced first, or there was a message that came out that said they've stopped vote. They're not going to vote last night. They're going to go into this morning, which seemed like a sensible thing to do. We now know what happened is that the NEC and the Commission and so on, the Electoral Commission, thought it would be better to do it this morning. And then the conference floor overruled them and said, no, we want to start voting. And it's interesting to try and figure out, does that benefit one side more than the other? My sense is the Zuma side wanted to keep the momentum going. You know, it's also certain things work better at night, you know. You can do certain things at night, which is not so easy to do in daylight, not to be too cynical. But then they were overruled by the floor, and then they started voting. So, yes, I think also they wanted to avoid some of these caucuses that people go home, they party, they fall asleep, and they're not there on time to vote, which has happened at previous conferences.
Yeah, I mean, they keep saying that they have caught up the last time, and that they are running according to schedule, but
I don't know whose schedule.
I don't know whose schedule either, because it looks like it is delayed. And I mean, there is so much to still get through. We're sitting on Monday. They've said Wednesday it's closing, but you know, we've just closed the voting process, unless there are plenaries happening on the sidelines. But we've heard some people coming and sitting with us this morning saying they saw busloads of the delegates arriving at hotels ready to go and sleep. So they don't seem to be attending those plenaries. So I don't know who's in them.
No, and I don't think there are plenaries. I don't think anything's happening at the moment. And I think what will happen, and possibly sadly so, but I think naturally, once the election results are announced, I think this conference will become a very damn squib. You know, I think the press will lose, a large extent will lose interest, but I also think some of the delegates will go, we're over it now, you know. And of course, actually, it's really important what still happens around the elections, because we have all these policy papers that still have to be adopted, and some of those things are really crucial. They are around economic issues, land, etc. So yeah, but I think we'll see pretty much the conference, yes, becoming, to some extent, almost being over once these election results are announced.
Yeah, and allowing people to just take a deep breath. Let's focus on Gwede Mantashe now, because we've been hearing him, seeing him. We've been talking about the fact that he's been with us for the last 10 years. What do you make of the character of Gwede Mantashe? How would you rate him as the SG of the ANC for these last few years?
Do you know, I think, I mean, it's not for nothing that people call him Uncle Gwede, you know, because he is like our uncle, you know, in a way, in some extent. And I think actually if you watch the press conference, you'll see that the press, there's a sense of nostalgia at the press. And if you talk to members of the press as well, they say, oh, even though at times he annoyed us, we're going to miss him. You know, he's accessible. And his press conference is very much vintage Gwede as well. You know, a bit of humor, a bit of bite, long philosophical answers when he doesn't really want to answer a difficult question. It's very much Gwede Mantashe. I mean, I think if he most probably is honest, he will feel slightly ambivalent about his term of office. It was under his reign, of course, as SG, that the ANC has really started to struggle, where membership started reducing significantly, that they lost some of the big metros, that they've had all these internal squabbles and fights, that these incredible factions have developed, because remember, he's been there for the last 10 years. I mean, we can't almost remember a time where Kgalema Motlanthe was the SG.
Yeah.
And you know, so I think for him it was a very, I mean, and he seemed to acknowledge that as well, a trying time at times. And certainly I think this is why it was so important for him to run this conference properly, because he's already sitting with a bit of a legacy of conflict in the ANC and things not going as well as he would have liked it. And that's why for him, he couldn't afford another failed issue here with the conference.
I'm going to ask you to pause because we've got so much more to talk about Gwede Mantashe and the SG, the outgoing SG, who's just hosted his final press conference. But I believe that our political editor, Sophie Mokoena, has managed to get Zweli Mkhize, who last night I took a lot of people by surprise by declining that deputy president position and nomination. She's with him right now. Let's find out what was behind that decision and how he's feeling today.
Well, thank you, Leanne. Indeed, we are here at Nasrec trying to get reactions, but also to ensure that we cover the story extensively in terms of what has transpired thus far. We know yesterday the delegates did make their statement in terms of who must be in the ballot. Among those who was supposed to be in the ballot paper is the Treasurer General of the ANC, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, but he declined the nomination of being a deputy president. We are going to speak to the Treasurer General, Dr. Zweli Mkhize. Sawubona Khabazela.
Sanibona, sawubona.
Uphilile Khabazela?
Ngiyaphila kakhulu, ngiyathemba nababukeli bayaphila.
Ngiyabonga Khabazela. Dr. Zweli Mkhize, yesterday, the ANC members, because you always take a cue from the ANC members, took a decision that you must be on the ballot paper for the deputy president's position. You declined. Can you share with us the reasons?
Firstly, let me say, I want to acknowledge all the support of all the branches and the members of the ANC who had nominated me. I really felt honored, and I also was up to dealing with this task, and I was ready to do it. But I must also say there are lots more other members after nominations would approach me and were willing to give us the support and were asking that I should continue to stand, and I'd agreed. I had signed the form and I'd agreed. In the process, you would have seen that this conference has got quite a lot of tension with a lot of contestation, and we've all been trying to find ways of how do we help to build unity in the organization. And in the process, I've been engaging with a number of comrades, and after engaging with a number of leaders in provinces and regions and leaders of delegations, I came to a point where I felt that more needs to be done to help the ANC to come together. And I made a point that this campaign, although I was campaigning in my name, but I was also campaigning for the unity of the ANC. And that unity would be, if I was elected, I would be available to help to build unity. And if I'm not elected, I would still want to work for unity. And in this case, after discussing with all the members and looking at some of the issues about gender, about unity, about the differences, I then offered that it would be, for me, if it would help to unify the ANC, I would step aside, because it's not about one person's really. It's about the ANC overall unity. And so that's what the contribution one was making. So I engaged a number of these leaders to say, I would step aside, but can we then go out and pull comrades and see if we can still get some form of consensus or a way of an inclusive approach where you can have leaders from all groups being present, so that when the members emerge out of here, they must feel that each one has got a stake in the leadership elected, because a slate that will come out as it was before, during the lobby time, it might be, a little bit more difficult to unite the ANC. It's better to have members coming from different strands or groups being together, because that's what will pull all the members together. So that is what made me take the decision. But I do want to say to those who were feeling upset, disappointed, that it's part of making a contribution to build a stronger ANC, and the matter doesn't end here. After a conference, we'll need each other, and we still want to play a role there. I still want to be part of the National Executive Committee, so we'll continue to work for unity on the ANC. For us, unity is paramount. It's bigger than all individuals, and this is why I've said to the other comrades that I'm prepared to step aside. The ANC must grow and be stronger and be united.
Tiji, when I look at the mood inside there, when I look at the language, it reminds me of Polokwane. And after Polokwane, it looks like ANC didn't learn. Even in terms of the court cases, pre-conference, it looks like you didn't learn from Mangaung. When is the ANC going to learn?
Well, let me start with the personal level. When we went to Polokwane, I was not just there. I was actually the convener of the entire caucus. And I understood the tensions, the pain, the tearing apart that happened in the organization. So when I stood and said I would like us to focus on unity, and I did make a point that I was there myself, we cannot take this route again. So we are really going to continue persuading the members of the ANC that we need to find a way to unify the ANC. The route we took towards Polokwane, we should have learned not to take. And therefore, out of this year, we must take those lessons to help the ANC beyond conference to try and unify. I would still like to say we need each other. We need to work together. There is no such a situation where we will say that those others get out and that others must come in only. But what we need is to say, let's bring a broad consensus of leadership that's going to take the organization forward. The conference now is going to pronounce on who the leadership is. We must accept that leadership. But with the build-up of tensions before, we need to understand that we will be needing each other to try and build bridges across each other and help the comrades to understand that we have gone past the conference. Let's leave the issues of conference behind. Let's move on. Let's work on the strength of the ANC and deal with the weaknesses of the leadership, if they are, and strengthen them so that the ANC must be strong and continue to lead the country.
You can only self-correct if you are honest in terms of your diagnosis, in terms of the cause. What is the cause where we find the ANC in this state?
Well, to start off with, one never had any illusion that the conference will solve all the problems. I believe that's a journey. It's something that we have to take over a longer period. So the conference has to be the first start. Let's get a leadership now in place. Then let's get the leadership to institute a very strong sense of honest reflection. Then we must be able to deal with the weaknesses that we identify and act. So that when there are, problems of misconduct and discipline, we must act. When there are irregularities and manipulation of membership, we must correct. There are lots of branches that have got complaints right now that we need to go back there, even if the conference is over, to go and correct the way people have been excluded, the way people have had gatekeeping, the way some people are abusing the positions of authority to actually get control of the branch membership and therefore make people unable to freely express themselves. We must deal with all of those issues. These are the things that I believe, I'm ready to be part of the team that will correct them. I'm also ready to part with the lessons, and many of us were part of the Polokwane situation. We have to take this issue seriously, that the ANC cannot be allowed to break apart. And so one was making just that contribution, but going forward, we need everyone to understand it's no longer about persons, it's not about a group, it's not longer about factions, it's about the ANC. We cannot perish together when we can see that there are things to be corrected. And so I'm hoping that out of this conference we'll emerge stronger and united and move forward. But also I believe that even those who will not have, whose candidates will not have won, they will still accept that this is the ANC. We must try and move on and move forward with the leadership that would have been elected. The conference decisions are final and we must accept that leadership. With me, whether I'm part of the top 6 or not, I'm still going to be part of the ANC and we can still continue to make a contribution. You can only deal with 6 people there. So even those who have contested, not all of them are going to be into the top 6. Some are going to be part of the body of the National Executive Committee. We must take responsibility for the ANC to grow, to be united, to be stronger. And we must go out there and say to the comrades, when this conference rises, there should be no tears. There shouldn't be people who are feeling defeated. There mustn't be a situation where people feel that they are, they now must walk away from the organization. We mustn't have any of that. We must have a situation that says the ANC remains the ANC even if you did not vote for the leader who's leading you now. Let's move on.
And finally, how do you utilize the institutional memory that perhaps currently you are battling to bring back, because many, after Polokwane, after Mangaung, the reality is people are not participating. They've got skills, they've got rich knowledge of politics. The former president, Kgalema Motlanthe, the former president Mbeki, and many other ordinary, not only those high-profile leaders, at branch level, ordinary ANC trial and tested cadres who were so disillusioned and who are so disillusioned currently because they believe ANC is kind of dying.
You see, now for me, this is when I think you need a consultative conference. This is where I think the ANC leadership should convene leaders of the ANC at various levels and leaders of the also of society, civil society, NGOs, churches, traditional leaders, labor, and then bring in those comrades who were activists in the past and pull them together with the current leadership. Comrades, we have arrived here. The conference is over. Here is the leadership. These are the decisions that we have taken. These are the mistakes that we have seen. We would like you to work with us to pull together the African National Congress, make your contribution, come back and be active on the ANC. This is the introspection that we have done. We want to take the ANC forward. Even those who may have felt that they needed to retreat and go back, they must come back. Even those who are unhappy because of certain decisions, we are now prepared to boldly take those decisions and move forward. We also want to make sure that the challenges that are faced by our branches, our communities, and the way that our members conduct themselves, where our communities are complaining, we must pull those together. This is what we need to be able to do. So I'm hoping that when this leadership is elected, we should then be able to say we move forward to find a way that will be embracing to everyone, to bring them back, to support the ANC and generate that confidence that people once had in the ANC. The ANC has got lots of support and still got a long way to go. We must therefore build on that. I believe that this is something that we can do.
Nyabong Kabazeli, the ANC Treasurer General, the outgoing Treasurer General, Dr. Zweli Mkhize. Over to you, Peter and Leanne.
Sophie, thank you very much indeed. Talking to, I suppose, maybe the biggest surprise in the movement of people that were declining their nominations and pulling out of the race. The others perhaps not as expected as Zweli Mkhize, because for a time he was actually considered as a compromise candidate between the top two, and that they felt that maybe he might have been the guy to bring the party together, but to fall out completely, maybe he just didn't get enough votes from the various branches as a starting point, but certainly was a key figure. But perhaps over time he was seen as being close to the president and by extension then close to the NDZ camp. But we've still got Melanie Vervoort in studio to talk to us. Just react for us a little bit on what you've just heard and seen now, Zweli Mkhize. He said all the right things. It was about unity, putting the party together. What was the sub-tweet that you were hearing?
Look, for me, it wasn't such a big surprise because from the nominations, you could see it was going nowhere for him. He had, at some stage, I mean, less than half of Lindiwe Zisulu's nominations. She had less than half. Well, the two of them combined had less than half of what Didi Mabuza had. So in itself, you know, there's a rule in politics, never stand for something unless you know you can win, or you have a chance of winning. And once you know you're not going to make it, it's better to just step aside, you know, and negotiate something else. Because, of course, you're just splitting votes, and they'd be with a race so tight, you don't want to split votes. I think also for me, I got a sense increasingly towards the end of this campaign that he was a guy who played his cards wrong. He was trying to stand in both camps. He was trying to do this thing with Mabuza, or well, maybe not him, but Mabuza was trying to use him to be, he was kind of playing inside the Cyril camp, but then Cyril never put him on his slate. Then he was on the NDZ side, kind of, but he also didn't get onto that slate. And so in the end, you know, sometimes playing your cards both ways can end you up in either camp. And I think it's unfortunate because I do think he's got a lot of credibility amongst the business people, and as SG, you know, questions sometimes still about his background in KZN, but certainly the business community likes him. Of course, it doesn't mean, and I certainly don't think his political career is over. I think some of the others would be, but with him, absolutely not. And my guess is one of the two camps, but we don't know exactly which one, has offered him something else, you know, some ministry or some high position somewhere else. I certainly don't think his political career is over in a long shot. The other interesting point for me from that interview is this talk of unity again, where he's talking by implication, something I've written about and also spoken about to you, is about the fact that they can possibly by default or by orchestration, we need to see how that pans out, actually end up with a unity slate, where we don't know exactly which is going to be the top position, but that we see maybe the Didi Mabuza being the deputy, but you see Gwede Mantashe as chairperson, you see Paul Mashatile as treasurer, and then the question is also a little bit open still around the SG. That's a mixed slate. That is a unity slate. And then you can see what happens is then, irrespective really of who becomes the president, then the ANC is unlikely to see a split, because why do you split? You know, there is some Cyril Camp people on there is some NDZ people on there. They know they're much likelier then to still retain above 50% majority in 2019.
All right, so let's go back then to the premise of the split in the first place, the various slates and what they stood for. Some would say that one slate was about protecting the president and the other slate not so much. If that is the case, what does that mean in a mixed slate?
Well, that's going to be very interesting, because although it might benefit the ANC, there's a question about whether it benefits the country, of course, right? Because you can say on the one hand there's unity. On the other hand, you can also become slightly paralyzed, you know, because you now have these factions so pulling to one side. And this is why they're all talking, every single one of them. No, we'll work together. We might not be friends, but we'll stay comrades. We have to unite. Every single one of them are saying that. And we will have to see. I mean, we've made this point over and over again. What we also need to look at very carefully is the composition of the NEC. Because remember, the top 6 are really office bearers. They are supposed to just implement and run the organization. They're not really policy-making or decision-making bodies. The NWC is, and then of course the NEC is, and the NEC elects the NWC. So in a way, even though I think we focus too much at the top position, but then also we focus in a way almost not enough on what's going to happen in the NEC, and then we have to look very carefully at the NWC. Because remember, President Zuma got away with everything he got away with for so long because the NEC remained a majority towards him. And then also, of course, the NWC, even more so than the NEC, supported him. And once you have those two behind you, it's very, very difficult in the ANC for any severe criticism or direction change to happen.
I also heard during the interview while he was talking to Sophie, he brought out the comment of saying, I mean, unity, 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 and we understand that that's what everybody's saying, and I believe a couple of the media got hold of Minister David Mahlobo as well, and he's also on the unity bandwagon saying, unity, 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 I don't know anything, but I just know we unity. But if we look at what Zweli was actually saying, he's saying that the ANC should actually go into a consultative conference after this and allow members that have perhaps left to come back into the fold. Do you think something like this could actually happen?
You know, it's interesting that he would say that, because look how long the veterans tried to do something like that. I mean, the veterans, and these are the veterans, these are the stalwarts of the ANC. These are the people that were in the leadership for so long, you know, and they almost, I wouldn't say begged, but, you know, really pleaded with the organization to form something like that. And it's interesting now to hear Zweli raising that. I haven't actually heard many other people raising that in the ANC at all.
Not at all.
And that's very interesting.
Not during this turbulent period.
And so that's very interesting to me that he is now coming up with something like that. And we'll have to see if that gets traction. And to what extent, you know, they are willing. I have to say, I think they have conference fatigue, you know, after the policy conference and after this. So I don't see it happening very quickly. And of course, what we have seen is that parallel structures to the ANC have started doing that with largely ex-ANC people, or people who are still in the ANC but very disgruntled, through Safe South Africa and so on. So it will be interesting to see. look, I think also we need to acknowledge that as we now, after today, of course, we will have a gear shift change happening, because now, after this, we've been so focused about the ANC conference and what's happening internally in the ANC. But of course, after this ANC conference, assuming everything goes off successfully, we will have to start looking again at the broader political spectrum.
Yeah.
Be less worried about what internal ANC people think, but what the nation thinks. Because of course, then we're only away maybe 16 months from January away from a national election, which is not a lot of time. And so you can also be quite sure that the ANC would start also in their own heads now have to make a shift again, because now they shouldn't be so worried about their branches. They should be worried what the general population think. And the opinion polls are showing interesting things, so they will most probably come up with all kinds of ideas now to A, unify the ANC, but B, also to start getting the broader populace back into the fold.
I mean, even going back to Gwede Mantashe and the press conference that we just saw a couple of minutes ago, he was also talking about going on this marketing drive where we need to market the ANC and get the perception out there right again. I mean, I didn't again think that would be a route that the ANC would even think of having to do.
And yes, and Gwede, despite all his protection of the president and how close we are, and we need to understand the man and so on, Gwede must know that if you're going to market the ANC, one of your biggest problems with your brand at the moment is in fact the president of the ANC at the moment and the president of the country.
Yeah.
He is, and whether it's fair or not is totally besides the point. It is what is happening in terms of the public perception. So if you want to brand the ANC, you need to deal with the problem in your brand, and that is very largely the president is very largely the problem.
We're talking about these various groups. It wasn't that long ago that we saw stalwarts sitting in a room talking about the malaise and the problems of the party and what needs to be fixed. We saw the Veterans League split. We didn't know which one was the real one and which one wasn't. And I'm just wondering, we have an election, new leadership comes through. What does that mean after tomorrow? Do these groups say, oh, he's no longer president of the ANC, we can now all come together? What happens? Because they were very split, and especially if a split ticket comes in, there are a lot of people who were resisting the consultative conference and all of those kinds of things. How do the stalwarts get brought back into the fold?
Yeah. I mean, and if I may just add to what you were saying, I mean, you saw a bit earlier, we had a conversation with Barbara Hogan outside. She was fuming. I mean, you could see how disappointed she is. She can see that her party has disappointed her. She was speaking in the memory of her late husband, but let's not forget that she is also a struggle veteran and somebody that has been a part of this organization, spent a long time in jail. And her words were, I need to see my future in this organization, and that's without even knowing the results. So just to add to what you asked.
And that is the real sadness of what has happened, because the ANC, for most people who have been part of the ANC, is not just a political party that they join, that they get membership, and if they get tired, they join another party or they just resign. For most people who joined the ANC, it goes far, far deeper. And I think, when you speak to all these people who have suffered so much, and even some of the people after that, they are heartbroken about what's happened. There's this mixture, quite rightly, between anger and sadness. Now, I am sure that Barbara in particular is also annoyed because the president claimed in an interview, that he didn't think that the letter that was written by her late husband, and who was such an amazing man, Ahmed Kathrada, and that's really an insult to his memory, a true insult, And you can do many things in the ANC, but you should not insult the memory of somebody like Ahmed Kathrada, who I think for many people, we had Madiba and we had Ahmed Kathrada. I mean, there were other, of course, as well, but the two of them, and also having been such great friends, but so their value systems, the integrity, you don't question that, And so I think that is true. So I think, look, it's going to be a hell of a challenge for any incoming president, is how do you unite this country? And frankly, one needs to wonder if they actually are looking forward to this challenge, because they will sit, first of all, with an economy that's struggling. They will sit with demands of an electorate which is frustrated, which can easily erupt. We've seen how service delivery riots can easily erupt. You just need to throw a spark in there and that can go erupt. And then they have to deal with this thing of the organization itself being split. So can you imagine just all these tasks that a new president, you know, I have to say, if I was Cyril Ramaphosa, I would go, or let me say any of the two, if they are the losers, that they would say, actually, I wish you well. Okay. I'm going to retire now to go, you know,
I have one,
best of luck.
I have one final question. Peter, I'm not sure if you have a question too. So we have got and I think many people want to know this, we have got a country president, as in President Jacob Zuma, and then we will have a president of the ANC, a new one, which we should be hearing the announcement coming in a couple of hours' time. Who's more powerful, and how do they work together?
Very interesting question. Because, of course, strictly speaking, in terms of government affairs, the president is, right? And the president gets elected by parliament, by the members of parliament, one of only two positions that is voted on in parliament through a secret ballot. The constitution says that you elect the president, and the other one's the speaker, through a secret ballot by all members of parliament. And whoever is in the House, a majority of that takes it. So you don't need all 400. It's not like a vote of no confidence. Whoever is in the House on the day, that person's win. But of course, we know the way the system works is that, in fact, we know that they are an elected official from the ANC. And strictly speaking, therefore, Lutuli House trumps always the president. And that's what's the interesting thing here. And thus, if we now have a new president of the ANC, which we will have, but we still have the old president of the country, and he is not willing to go, you're going to have two centers of power, which is very, very messy, you know. So unless, and this is going to be the interesting thing, unless the two gets along really well and they can talk and there's no stress, you know, well, then I suppose, you know, there is this vague possibility that they can get along and it can work. Highly unlikely. And do remember that at Polokwane, there was a decision taken that the ANC did not want two centers of power, exactly to stop this kind of conflict from taking place. And remember, then Thabo Mbeki was kind of pressured to resign. There is no pressure legally or constitutionally on the president to resign. But I do have to say that I think certainly if there's a Cyril Ramaphosa win, that there'll be huge pressure on the president to resign. And then if the NEC is behind Cyril Ramaphosa, that I think the president will go. He doesn't want to face a Mugabe-like scenario where he's possibly voted out in parliament, because that can then happen. And I think even under Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's win, she would like him to go as well. I can't see her wanting to live in his shadow, you know, for long. And so I think there will be pressure, most probably under a Dlamini Zuma win. He might want to stay on a little bit longer, finish a few things that he hasn't finished, you know, a few deals around energy and so on.
Lani Fufud, always a pleasure to talk to you, to get your insights as one who knows this organization quite well over the years. But thanks so much. I guess all of what we've been talking about is speculation, because until the next few hours, once we get the numbers and the names, I think the real speculation begins of what happens next.
Yeah, certainly is. And I mean, we've been watching everything happening externally, and you can see the currency is betting on whichever side as well. It's sitting at 12.90, it then goes to 12.70. Who knows? And the reality is that everything at this point is speculation, and people are taking bets in either direction, but there is no certainty whatsoever. So what we do know, the voting has concluded now. The counting will get underway, or is underway. We're still waiting for those official words from the ANC, and those results should be announced later this afternoon. So who the next president will be? Well, we'll find out later, when you find out as well.
Well, the one thing I'm going to miss is how the president always ends his speeches, and this, you can hear this theme here. That's the bit I love the most.
I'm going to get a copy for you. We'll get a copy for you,
I'm
and
going to make this my ringtone.
Oh my goodness, okay, enjoy
stand
it.
by though, because Frances Hurd is coming up at the top of the hour, and I wonder if she'll be able to make sense of the rand movements against the dollar, particularly with the results pending. But for me and Leanne,
I'll leave it to you. I'm just going to say goodbye. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Bye-bye. God bless you.